Welcome to Armchair Expert. I'm your host, Judd Apatow. I'm joined by...
Leslie Mann.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, that makes sense. Today's guest is Judd Apatow. He is an American filmmaker, actor, and comedian. He's a director, a producer. He's all the things. He's got perhaps the most impressive list of comedic credits someone can have.
Yeah.
Freaks and Geeks, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Superbad, Knocked Up, Trainwreck, Anchorman, Step Brothers, Pineapple Express, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, The Big Sick. He also produced Gary Goldman's The Great Depression on HBO that's on right now. And he's got a book that's coming out tomorrow, November 12th, which is entitled It's Gary Shandling's Book, which will be a fascinating read. Also, Judd has a surprise guest stop by because they had a meeting afterwards. So we have a late joiner in the episode, so look for that. So please enjoy Judd Apatow.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
Leslie sent her best, by the way.
How is Leslie?
She's doing great.
You guys have been married for 23, or been together 23 years?
Since 95.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Do you ever marvel at the span of time yourself?
At my longevity, have we started? Is it
Yeah, we're
happening?
started.
ABR.
Are we slipping in? We're slipping in.
Yeah.
I marvel at anything that works. Yeah, we met in 95, and yeah, it's been a long, great ride. But, you know, it's simple. You may feel this way. It's easier when you think, I don't deserve this. How did this happen?
You mean that in that it makes you a better partner, or?
Yeah, because you just know. If we're fighting, I'm wrong. And
Okay.
I'm glad she's still here. I don't understand why she's not trying to escape. And
Yeah, because the money's now half hers, right? I mean, in some level, laws of California, half the shit's hers.
you go straight to the cash talk.
Of course I do.
To you, it's all
That's-
about getting to the how would we split up the money?
That's what this
Yeah,
show's
well, I
basically
goes-
about.
I generally go straight towards whatever I fear surrounding.
I look at it just like, okay, she's got her George of the Jungle stack. Then I got my Jill Big Taylor stack. We got all this in paperwork figured out. You know, we got Celtic Pride and heavyweights money over here. We've got.
He's sandbagging. He's
Yeah.
being so. These are not his hits, Monica.
I'm familiar with the hits.
You know what's funny? I was just telling Monica last night. I was like, yeah, the wild thing is I knew Leslie, not in 95, but darn near, like 97
Yes.
maybe.
Sure.
Met her in the Groundlings. We were both in like level 1 or 2.
Yeah, I remember when she was doing it.
Yes, and I was telling Monica the really confusing thing about Leslie, we were all dead broke. And,
Yes.
and when we went outside, she had a brand spanking new four-door Tahoe.
Well,
or
that's
Denali.
from commercials.
Yeah.
You know, in the early
Okay.
days, especially back then, I don't know what the residuals are.
Monica knows really well.
Yeah, they've gone downhill though.
But in the old days, you know, you'd get a commercial and you'd make $20,000-$30,000. I remember I lived with Adam Sandler when I was first starting out, and he got an Amex commercial.
Oh, boy.
And it was all like young, goofy Adam buying stuff with his first credit card.
Yeah.
And then the checks started rolling in, and we were like, how do we get one of these commercials?
Yeah.
And I remember getting a commercial agent.
Yeah.
And I would go in for these commercials, but I didn't know how to act. And I hadn't taken any acting classes. I went in for this Jack in the Box commercial, and I couldn't stop pointing. So everything I said, I would just point and point. And the guy was like, could you just do it one more time and not point? And I would do it again, like the new Jack in the Box burger, and I'm pointing and pointing. And then he took a roll of tape, and he taped my hand to my leg.
Oh, wow.
And then I just stopped going to...
He really was fighting
audition.
for
Well, I was
you.
just going to say,
Yeah.
modern day casting directors would not have worked with you that
No.
much. They wouldn't have wasted
Yes.
tape on someone.
I took it as sexual abuse.
Well, when I started doing the commercial thing, yeah, I would bump into these guys, you know, older guys at these auditions. And I guess the ticket was to sell some kind of product where they just stuck with the campaign for years, right? And I guess like Candy was infamous for that. This is in the 90s.
Yeah.
Where a guy, you know, some guy was like, yeah, I did a Starburst commercial and I made $390,000. It ran for 7 years and it blew my mind.
Yeah.
But I think more and more, and this holds true really at every level of it, there's a lot of lore. There's a lot of promises You keep getting to these different stations and going, wait, why am I making a fifth of what everyone else apparently is or is rumored to make?
Why aren't I making what the progressive lady's making?
Yeah. Flow.
How much money is she making? That's all anyone in Hollywood thinks every time we see a progressive insurance commercial. Man, is Flo raking in the cash. I hope she is.
Oh, she is.
I'm sure
Again,
she is.
she's a Groundling alum of ours. And yeah, she owns a home and stuff. And I think, how fantastic.
I had simple dreams when I first started to like get one of those commercials or to be allowed to be a warm-up guy. You know,
wow.
if I could just warm up the crowd at Cheers, because I would hear like, oh, you get $1,000, $1,000 to like do the crowd warm
Is that
up
what
at
they get?
Friends
Wow.
or Cheers.
Yeah.
Never could get those gigs. Never could get them.
By the way, that's a unique gift unto itself that
Yes.
isn't really celebrated in the way that maybe it should be.
Oh yeah, no, it's hard because when you warm up a crowd, sometimes the taping's 4 hours, and every time they take a break, they're like, "We're going to take a break for 20 minutes," and you got to jump up there and give out Kit Kats and have
Yes.
dance competitions to
Yes.
keep the
Yeah.
crowd amused.
So I listened to a bit of your Marin, which was fantastic, and I want everything to funnel into some viewpoint I have.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm projecting a ton.
So whatever I say will support your feeling.
For me,
Ultimately.
it'll all be confirmation bias for me, but
Okay.
not the listener.
Yes,
but
yes.
that'll be the fog of war I'm in, just so
Okay.
you know. Because one of the things I really, really try to say or encourage as much as I can is like some flexibility with your game plan.
Yes.
Because you're often loved by some group and not embraced by another. And you'd be foolish not to listen to who's loving you and what
Yeah.
you're great at and all these kind of things. So I just feel like you're very emblematic of that.
Sure.
Does that trigger you at all? to
bobbed
even-
and weaved.
Yeah, you bobbed and weaved.
Sure.
And now in retrospect, you seem like an absolute genius because now film has become such a crazy endeavor, right? To make a comedy or to make anything but a tentpole movie seems very dicey
Yes.
or a high risk of failure. And so now a lot of people are like running towards TV. They have been for maybe the last, 8 years or something. But you have always been in both worlds. And again, now in retrospect, it seems like, oh, Judd always knew the writing was on the wall or something, right?
That movies were over.
Yeah, but that's not what happened, right? You just kind of, did you go with the flow of the river a lot of the time?
I think when it comes to going to TV and away from TV, I have a long history, good and bad, with TV experiences. So I started out writing some TV pilots. I remember I wrote one for Colin Quinn and Mario Joyner driving a car across the country. Pete Siegel directed it, and it was half reality, half scripted. This is in the early 90s, and that didn't get picked up. And then I created the Ben Stiller Show with Ben, and we were so psyched when we were going to make the best sketch show ever, and we worked really hard and got canceled after 12.
I was heartbroken. I was in high school, and I fucking loved that show.
You were one of the people watching it at 7:30, probably 6:30. What
No,
state
we're
did
at the very last mile of Eastern Time Zone.
Yes, and so I was so angry at our treatment because we had a supporter at the network, and then he got a promotion. Suddenly he's not the head of the network. Now he's the head of everything, and we never hear from him again.
Oops, yeah.
And then there's a new guy who gets the job as the head of the network, and he instantly watches the Ben Stiller Show and goes, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And that, and right there, I said to myself, how does he not get this? So whenever he would give us notes to change anything, I always said no. And I'm like 24 years old.
Right.
I'm like, no, I don't take notes from the guy who doesn't get it. Like, that's not the guy you take the notes from. And I'm sure it didn't help our survival.
Yeah.
And so then I went to movies because I was like, TV's unfair. And I worked on Cable Guy and Heavyweights and Larry Sanders. And then finally I went back years later to the same network, to the same guy.
The same guy.
And did Undeclared. And he did the same thing.
Oh, God.
He promised me he would get it this time.
And really quick, when you were going back into the ring, did you think like, well, now I've like accrued some
Bread.
Some cachet. I'm going to be listened to this time.
You never have the cachet you think
You just
you
don't,
have.
right?
So I worked for Shandling for years on the Larry Sanders Show. I just put out a book that is called It's Gary Shandling's Book, with all the stuff I found going through his estate, his journals, his photos, his script pages.
Really quick, were you granted access to that because you had made the documentary? Did his wife go like, or not? He didn't.
I just
have-
went in the house. No one was there.
Under
No
the
one was
cloak of
there.
night.
Stormed in.
Yeah. No, his estate allowed me to make the documentary. And then when I made it, I found all these incredible things. And I thought, I'd love if people could just have this. Like, I'm reading Gary's journals. I wish young comedians could read it to see all the advice and just what the journey was.
What does it feel like to be going through someone's stuff? Is there like a
sad.
voyeurist? Oh, it's just sad.
I would just sit there bawling and
You
crying. It's hard to describe what it's like to read 30 years of your mentor's journals when you're so in grief, but now you're getting to know him better than you knew him in life.
You personally,
Yes,
Judd,
because now I'm in his head.
Yeah. Well, you're getting probably a view into him that I can't imagine anyone did. It's not like he's sharing his journal with girlfriends and friends or anything.
Not at all. And I'm reading it, sometimes years of journals in one sitting. So I'm also having a very compressed emotional experience of all of his feelings.
Right.
It's hard to describe how moving and sad it is to do the ride with him.
Yes. And what percentage of the journals are basically just a tally of the day before, and what percentage are musings on life, emotional entries? Like, if you had to assign the percentages, how?
It's 90% supporting himself and 10% what happened, just trying to give himself advice. He's developing his higher voice. So when you read the journals, what you think is, I don't know what he was feeling, but it must have been rough.
Dark.
Yeah.
Based on this positive voice in his journal saying, hey, you know what you need to do. Whereas my journals, when I do them, are just trying to get out the bad voice. So the journal is all whining and complaining. I would fear my family ever reading them when I am gone, because it's just trying to get out toxic stuff. But Gary didn't do that.
You also, when you write in a journal, you must have some voice, because I even have the voice that I think, these could potentially be of interest to somebody at some point.
Never. I just want to burn them. I think about burning them now because they're just a whiny bitch. There's nothing of value in it. They're not funny. They're just, get out the worst part of your mind.
Yeah. The voice that's telling you you're a piece of shit.
Yes. But Gary's voice is, drop your ego, do things with love.
Well, you seem to be on a path, right, of self-exploration and trying to be mentally healthy. You interviewed him. This is this really fun thing, Monica. Judd had in high school, got involved with the high school, was it a radio station?
Yes.
And then interviewed all these people when he was 16 years old, like
So
Seinfeld
cool.
and Shandling and you name it. You somehow got your way. And he has all the tapes.
Oh, that's so cool.
Very fascinating on a lot of levels. But Shandling, it was revealed in that he was a writer of sitcoms and then decided to do stand-up. So
I thought one of the funniest things, I didn't have time for it in the documentary, but Gary started out, he wrote some episodes of Welcome Back, Kotter and Sanford and Son. Mm-hmm. So I'm talking to the guy who was Gary's boss at Welcome Back, Kotter. And Gary was assigned a script. He wasn't on staff. They gave him money to write a script. I think he wrote a second script. And then Gary got in a terrible car accident. He almost died. It was like a rainy day, and someone stopped in front of him, and then he kind of had a little fender bender from behind. He gets out to look at the damage. While he's in between the two cars, someone hits Gary's car from behind and crushes Gary between the two cars.
Oh my God.
And so he has surgery. He has to have his gallbladder removed, and he's in the hospital. And when he's in the hospital, I think he's considering quitting writing sitcom comedy and just being a stand-up. Because when he is under, he has a religious experience. Like they're doing surgery on him, and he said that he heard a voice say, "Do you want to continue living Gary Shandling's life?" And then he said yes. And that when he woke up, he remembered everything that all the doctors said during the surgery. Just one of those
Sure.
experiences that he said made him realize there's more happening than this life. There's something after this.
May he be right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all I got is Gary telling me.
Yeah.
But he always had that confidence. And oddly, as neurotic as he was, no fear of death
Oh, really?
because of that.
Yeah.
So in the journals, he's having major surgeries. There's no, oh my God moments. It's all get comfortable with death. Don't fear death. So I speak to the head writer of Welcome Back, Kotter, and he says that Gary called him from the hospital and said, if you tell the insurance company that you were hiring me to be a staff writer next year, I'll get way more insurance money. For like lost wages.
He's on the grift already.
And the guy says to me that Gary wasn't going to get that job.
Right.
And indicated that he didn't even think Gary was that good.
Okay.
So he said to Gary, well, but you can't be a staff writer, right, Gary? And Gary's like, yeah. He's like, okay, you could tell him that you were going to be.
Oh, that's
But to me,
great.
that was like the funny secret of it all, was
Right.
that Gary has this legend of being this incredible staff writer. And the one guy who worked with him was like, he wasn't that good
Right.
at that
Yeah.
point in
And
his
it was
life.
all on the shoulders of a slip and fall scam, basically. Like a pro bono 30% lawyer
Yeah.
advised him.
But Gary got some money. I don't know if he got 10, 20 grand or something. But I think that was his buffer to really focus on stand up.
Yeah. When I think about you, I think about the fact that you were obsessed inexplicably at a young age with comedy and stand up specifically. And like some kid would want to fucking call you now
Oh, yeah.
from their high school radio station, and that 16-year-old has some fantasy about your life that then he wants. And isn't it weird how this whole thing kind of perpetuates itself? And I would
Sure.
imagine you'd really get confronted by that, sitting down and going through the life of someone you kind of idolized and had a fantasy about.
Absolutely, because I had this weird experience with Gary, which is I'm in my early 20s. The most important early job I got was being asked to write jokes for the Grammys for Gary. And we just got along really well as two neurotic Jewish guys. And he took me to New York to watch them rehearse and shoot the Grammys and be on stage.
Right.
And I'm 21, 22 years old.
Yeah.
And now I'm on stage with Sinatra and Bono and Peter Gabriel's running by and Springsteen and En Vogue.
Oh, sure.
And then suddenly Gary's like, hey, you should read this book. And it's this, Buddhist book, Transforming Problems into Happiness. Now, I had no religion at all.
Right.
And suddenly he's like, I think this would help you. And the book has a very simple Buddhist premise, which is when bad things happen, you should think, oh, this is an opportunity to fix something about myself or learn something about myself. So actually, every time you get a problem, you should be psyched.
Right. Because it's going to mark an episode of change, probably,
Yes.
or evolvement.
And as a guy with no spiritual background, parents didn't take me to temple once. My whole life, their only religion was nobody said life was fair. That's all I heard in my house.
That's a pretty good religion.
So that's a life-changing moment for a neurotic kid to go, wait a second, I'm not supposed to just bitch about the bad things, that the bad things are the good things.
Right. That things are happening for you and not to you.
All of that. And I never considered any of it. So as a mentor, it wasn't just comedy, it was that. So now when you talk about everything reversing, I think, well, the best thing I can do is put all that in a book. So some 19-year-old comedian or creative person or anybody
Right.
can find out what I found out. And then in a way, I become Gary because I'm just trying to keep the lessons going to someone else.
Keeping the ball in the air.
Yeah.
And so you were able to read that and find it profound and try to implement some of it into your life?
Well, I always have, to varying degrees of success. I mean, the interesting thing about Gary is, you wouldn't say that Gary was this calm, evolved, centered guy, but you also wonder what would have been if he didn't do
Yes. Yes. I think that's the most crucial thing people need to evaluate when they're thinking about a person. Is like, sure, they're not great, but this might be the best version of them, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And that's how I feel about myself. Like, I guess this is the journey. It's a bumpy journey to get less crazy, to learn more, to calm down. We were laughing the other day. I worked on Gary Goldman's, has this HBO special, a stand-up special. And Gary Goldman, he got terrible depression where he had to move back in with his family, at 37, 38 years old. He was really debilitated, put himself in a psych ward.
Yeah.
And then he got better. He felt better and wrote this incredible stand-up routine about depression that's called The Great Depression, that's going to be on HBO this coming month, October 5th. And we were just talking about how Bruce Springsteen wrote a whole book about depression.
Yeah.
That we all learned from his book that the reason why he was doing 4-hour shows was he did not want to be in the world.
Right, sure.
He wanted to be on stage. And even someone like him is on this journey of trying not to be crazy, dealing with emotional issues, and just figuring it out in his 50s and 60s.
Well, we watched, have you seen Norton's movie yet? Have you
Which one?
Gone to a screening? Edward's new movie.
Yes.
You saw it?
Yes.
Okay,
Incredible.
So we saw it yesterday.
Motherless Brooklyn.
And the one line that I just uncontrollably giggled at because it resonated so much was when he's talking to Michael K. Williams and he goes, well, at least you've got this trumpet to funnel that craziness through.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, but there's a lot of hours in the day where I'm not playing the trumpet. And I was like, oh, like it was like straight into who I am. It's like I would have these little windows of freedom of performing or this or that, and then it just completely dangerous if I'm not doing that thing.
And do we want to fill all that time with work, or do we try to figure out how not to be crazy in the non-trumpet time?
Yes, how to live with ourselves, basically, hour to hour.
Sure, minute to minute, even being quiet. Like I notice, like, I'm not meditating lately, and I'm like, why? Because I just do not want to be with myself. I don't want to just, like that. It sounds like torture to sit in a quiet room.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's what I was curious about. Is your parents got divorced when you were 12, right? You stayed with Dad, which is kind of unique, I guess, in that era. What year was that? Maybe
early 80s. Yeah.
So that's unique unto itself, and then it can't be a coincidence that then also your obsession with comedy kind of starts overlapping that.
Yeah.
So personally, I got really drawn to writing simply because it was a world I would make up that I was Oz in. I could control every single element and it would go exactly where I wanted it to go. And I was so desperately seeking control of any little quadrant of my existence. And I just wonder, is there anything about when you would watch those people? Because the good ones, they're the marionette. Everyone in the audience is just along for a ride they've created out of thin air, and it's so powerful. It's like one of the most powerful things you can witness someone do.
It's funny, you look back and think, why did I get interested in this? There's that great line from Joe Walsh. I'm sure he's used, it's someone else's line about how, your life is a mess, but looking back, it's a perfectly crafted, organized novel.
Or a Pollock. Not now, all those dribbles were intentional.
But I look back and go, well, what happened? I had a grandfather who produced jazz, and he was just this ballsy Jewish hustler guy who
owned labels.
Yeah, but in the 40s, before he even had a job, he would just work in an airplane manufacturing plant, take his money, and hire jazz guys to record songs, print up the records himself, and go to record stores and sell them.
Yeah.
And that's how he got in the business.
Like Dizzy Gillespie he put out.
Exactly,
right?
Dizzy Gillespie.
That's incredible.
And Charlie Parker. And so there's like a little like, you can hustle. And you also don't have to follow the path everyone tells you to. You don't go to high school and college and get your degree and then whatever, that you could just do it.
Yeah.
And that was like, I want to meet the comedians. I'll just come up with some reason to talk to them.
Yeah.
I'll do a radio show. But now I'm sitting down with Jay Leno. I'm grinding him for info for an hour. How do you do it? How do you write a joke? How do you get into the club?
That's what's so clear about these
so
interviews
funny.
with Monica. It's like just vaguely about them. And it's more like, please give me the equation by which I'll end up with this
they're
result.
in front of you. Why wouldn't you ask? Like, that's your opportunity to find out.
But I do think
That's
it's unique
crazy.
to you because I think me in that opportunity, I would have been even more repugnant. I would have been trying to show them how funny
That
I
you
was
were.
on the
Yes.
phone,
Yeah.
thinking
Sure.
like, oh, they'll see that I'm one of them, and I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to vouch for me at some comedy club.
I did not have that confidence. Occasionally in the tapes, you hear me try to make a joke, and it is rough. There's a moment where I'm talking to Jay Leno, and Leno, is a club comic at that point, and he's on Letterman a lot in the early 80s, and I say, so where do you think you are in your career? I mean, you're doing really well, but you're not exactly playing the Universal Amphitheater. A weird, insulting thing to say to him.
Nagging him.
But then my grandma was friends with this comedian, Toady Fields, and Toady Fields was a Joan Rivers type who was riotously funny. I went to see her perform. She had diabetes later in her life, and she did a comeback tour with one leg.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
So I saw her at the Westbury Music Fair, and the crowd just went crazy for her. And I think on some unconscious level, I thought, I kind of feel like someone with one leg. Like I feel different.
Yes.
And she's getting standing ovations, and they adore her for her personality. And that's what I liked about stand-up. Like, oh, you don't have to be the most handsome person. You don't have to be the quarterback.
Yeah, that's liberating, right?
Yeah.
Comedians, more than any group, come in every shape and size and ethnicity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're thought of as cool. Like, wait, the weirdos are cool?
Yeah.
Yes.
That hit me hard as a little kid.
Also, a total meritocracy in that if you slay, you slay, and people
Yes.
will come to see you, and there's no power dynamic that you have to manipulate in that way.
I like that because I was always picked last in gym class. And I hated that other people decided my value.
Yes.
And I did think that, like, oh, Eddie Murphy's the funniest guy in the world. Like, there's no way he's going to be mistreated if he can be that funny.
Yes.
He's going to win.
Yeah.
And so, yes, the meritocracy aspect of it, I felt comfortable with. And then people would say, well, it takes like 10 years to figure out how to do it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start at 15.
Right.
Yeah.
So 25, I'm the biggest star in the world.
Yeah.
And I was deluded like that, but it made me motivated.
There's like, there's a prerequisite ingredient list for anyone to succeed in this. And there's a lot of stuff in there. And some of it's like hard work and diligence, a modicum of creativity. And then a lot of it's arrogance, delusion, ego. You can't underestimate. We've interviewed a few surgeons now.
Yeah.
And surgeons are the only people I've talked to that approach us as far as their just
Level of
unbridled
arrogance.
arrogance.
It's crazy.
Cut open your brain.
Yes.
And I know what to do with your brain.
Yes.
I can do it. And it's like, well, hold on. Why? No one can get in someone's brain and tinker, but you must believe that to succeed at it. So it's like, I think all of us try to like wrangle it and point it in a productive direction and then stay on top of it enough, but let it go enough. I mean, it's really a wild horse to be riding at all times. Because as you said, like when you co-created the Ben Stiller show, you were virtually the showrunner of that, right?
Yeah.
Or you were officially the showrunner?
Yeah, me and Ben.
And that's the single hardest job in Hollywood, being a showrunner. And you don't know what the fuck you're doing, but
Nothing. I knew
right?
nothing.
But you convince someone else you did, and then you're going to learn in the moment, and it's all just crazy arrogant.
It's madness. It's total madness. And I'm sitting in the dark at night, just like devastated by just how stressed I am and exhausted. And I have all these writers, and if I don't use their sketches, they hate me. And
Yeah.
I would sit and read management books
Oh.
about how to manage people because it's all built for you to hate the guy who picks the sketches. I would read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and I had meditation tapes. I would just sit in the dark and like,
Oh, you
I
were
am
a
at
mess.
peace with the world and everyone in it. Oh, I was such a mess. But I do think about that as I watch my kids. My daughter Maud is on that show, Euphoria.
We love it.
Yeah.
Like I have to look at that for her. Like I want her to be deluded.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you want to be in this business? Well, you have to be this insane person who thinks that you can win.
Yeah.
Who thinks you're going to get the parts, who can show up on a set with 100 people and do your scene without being nervous and just kick ass. And it does take this bizarre level of confidence. Like I lived with Sandler, and there was just a vibe around him like, this is the guy.
Right. He's a chosen one. He's going to do it.
And in my head, it was so clear Adam is going to be the biggest comedy star in the world. But I look back on it and go like, what was my proof at the time? He was in a room with a mattress with no sheet.
Right.
Yeah.
He would do phony phone calls all night because he just was so bored. He would do phony phone calls alone. He had all this energy.
What a purist.
and he, what was he? He was like an MTV like sidekick on a game show. So in my mind, I was so deluded that this was inevitable just based on his talent and charisma. But like, oh yeah, this is definitely going to happen. I wonder when it'll happen.
Right.
But this is going to happen. But looking back, like we were just two lunatics in a tiny $900 a month apartment.
Oh yeah.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
The war of attrition is really underestimated in Hollywood because it's like if you look at the people that you were surrounded with, like you drop out of USC, you go live with Sandler. Ben Stiller is in his infancy as a star. All these different people, and then slowly, just over time, you kind of look around. And you're like, this is impossible. Every one of us somehow found an outlet. It's like encouraging, and then it also really shatters the delusion of the people that were before you that you held in some esteem, right? Did you have these moments where like, oh, I guess they were fucking human.
They were just a group. Like
they were just a group.
Like Saturday Night Live or Monty Python. When I was a kid, I thought, I want to be a part of that. Oh, I wish I could be a part of one of those. And then in your life, you go, wait, I guess I was in a version of a group of people, whether it's, Leslie and Seth and Rudd. And
you more
Jonah
than anyone navigated all these little camps seemingly with perfection because some of them are really, again, from my perspective on the outside, like Sandler's Happy Madison camp. It's like you're in or you're out. It's kind of mafia.
Yes.
And you dance in and out of that, always have. And then you're in Adam and Will's camp, which is interesting. Then you kind of assembled the Freaks and Geeks camp that became the Seth and Evan camp and all this. It's just very fascinating that you seem to be the only person that kind of ducked in and out of all those little camps.
I think it's just because I'm built to be a supporter and someone that sits with people and goes, what are we doing? What do you want to do? Do you have any stories? Do you have anything? And so as a result, it's easier to move. I'm not the person trying to be the star in the group.
Right.
I'm the person going, I wish there was a Will Ferrell movie that he was the center of.
Yeah.
And so when Adam and Will say, well, we have a script that's the Will movie. And at that time, there wasn't a movie that was just Will.
Right.
The thing that I try to do is go, well, how can we get someone to do that? How can we make it great? How can we get someone to allow us to do that?
Yeah.
And as a fan, it's not about if they're famous. It's just, wouldn't it be great if Will had a movie?
Right. You're juggling a lot of things. So you find someone you think is funny. Now, mind you, obviously this gets easier and easier as you go because you've got a track record that says, oh, if he says this kid can be the lead of a movie, he can. So when you did Anchorman with Will and Adam, I guess Old School had come out?
Will wanted to do Anchorman, and we couldn't get anyone to make it. And this is before Elf and Old School. And so he has this script. And
that's fucking unbelievably
It's so funny. But the
right?
original version is even wilder. The original version that I read was all the Anchormen are in one plane and they're flying to the Anchorman convention. The plane gets in a crash with like a FedEx plane or a shipping plane that's filled with monkeys.
Oh
and
my God.
boxes of throwing stars. Right? And so they hit each other's wings. They both crash. So now all the Anchormen in Will and Adam's original idea are on the side of a mountain like that movie Alive about the soccer players all start eating each other.
The Andes.
And so they're stuck on like a snowy mountain. And then every once in a while, the monkeys just attack their camp with throwing stars.
Oh my God.
And within it was also this Alicia Corningstone story about that he's in love with the woman who's clearly smarter than all the men.
Right.
And then slowly over time and not being able to get the Throwing Stars version made, discussions would happen. Well, is there an adjustment in the story that might allow this to get made? And then, they decided, maybe this story of sexual harassment and gender prejudice, maybe that's the story, is this she's so much smarter than them and they're holding her down.
Right.
So they were I look at it now, very ahead of their time in mocking the awful behavior of men.
Yes. Obviously, the perfect guy to do it, Will, who has been on here. And, he, of anyone I've met, is the biggest enigma. It's like he's one of the funniest to ever live, but he's a great dad. He drinks a fun amount of drinking, but no problem there.
Yeah.
He's inclusive and nice to everyone. Like the whole time, I'm like, anything like a massage parlor, hand jobs? Like,
Yeah.
is there any darkness?
Well, I've spent a lot of time with Will, and I'll tell you where the darkness is.
Okay. Oh, good. Finally.
But it's not that dark. Will really doesn't like when people are rude to other people.
It's like the lightest darkness.
He's really mad at people who are not nice to other people. Yes, it's shocking.
Yeah, he's got a gnarly protective side.
It is shocking, and you know, to be around Will and Adam, there's nothing more fun than watching them work and improvise. And
Did you read the original August Blowout? You must have.
I don't know. I'm not.
That was
sure.
the one where Will was a car salesman.
Oh yes.
It's the same shit. There's a fucking panther. They got a panther to draw people to the dealership, and then it gets loose, and it's like the whole movie. It's like sometimes it's in the vents, and sometimes it just jumps out of someplace.
Yeah. They like out of control animals.
Yes. It's kind of a recurring theme in comedy, though. I mean, it's in The Hangover. Yeah, if you subscribe to the school that like comedy's best when there's a plausible
Chaos.
threat of death.
Oh sure. We were trying to do a reshoot on Anchorman, so we tested Anchorman, and there was a storyline that just didn't work at all, like an SLA terrorist group, and we shot it when we shot, and it just.
And a ton of great people are in it, right?
Chuck D and Maya Rudolph and Kevin Corrigan and there's a lot of amazing funny stuff in it, but it didn't track.
Right.
If you're a hardcore fan, you could go online, and Adam literally edited a second Anchorman that is that story, because he cut out so much of it that he was able to assemble a completely different movie.
Wow.
That we put out a 2 DVD set that had like Ron Burgundy, The Adventures Continue or something. And it is really funny, but it didn't work when we tested it. Like it wouldn't work as a commercial version of the movie. So Adam and Will wrote this new material that we wanted to reshoot, which was Alicia Corningstone falls into the bear pit at the zoo, and Ron Burgundy has to save her. So the studio doesn't get it at all. They don't understand the joke at all, which led to like the most hilarious, fascinating meeting of Adam McKay explaining to the head of the studio why bears are funny. The history of bears in comedy. And he actually turned out to be completely correct. It saved the movie. To add the bears.
Well, what's really funny is I remember Brill and I had just got back from New Zealand.
Yes,
and
I remember.
Without a paddle, and we had a big bear sequence. And I remember him calling me like, "There's a bear sequence," and they like panicked somehow. And I'm like, "I think there's room in the marketplace for two bears."
He was competitive.
Well, then he's just worried, like, "Oh shit, there's a fucking bear thing now in Anchorman."
But you worked with real bears.
Bart the bear, which is in
Did he kill someone, Bart the bear?
well.
Because there was a bear that Will worked with that killed the trainer.
Yeah.
And when we worked with the bears, we would go visit the bears, and there's like an electric fence around
Well,
them.
and tell people how tall the electric fence is. It's 4 inches off the ground.
Yeah, it's just
a fucking wire around your ankles.
And so that's how the bear knows not to like run at you when you visit the bear's home. So, but when the bear comes to a set, what they do is they set up string on the set. It's not electric.
To replicate.
The bear thinks it's electric.
boy.
Yes.
And so it's
So I worked with
Dicey.
Bart the bear, who's a brown bear. He's the one that Doug, the famous trainer, trained. And Brad Pitt made a documentary about this guy. He was in The Edge and all these. He's a very famous bear, incredible career. And I get to set and. A couple things. Bart he lives in Utah. They flew him to Seattle, then to Alaska, then to China, then down to New Zealand. He was the first bear ever to be in New Zealand. They're not nocturnal, but it was all night shoots with Bart. They're keeping him awake with a saucepan full of coffee and a saucepan full of donuts. They tell us, here are the rules with Bart. Don't ever look him in the face, in the eyes. Don't be afraid around him or he'll sense it, and never run around Bart. And I promise you, my first scene in my very first movie ever as an actor, Brill goes, okay, so the guys can see the bear behind you. You can't see it. Then eventually it occurs to you, there might be something behind me. You turn around, look at Bart, scream, and run away. And I was like, but wait, those are all three of the rules in one thing. Why won't Bart change? Oh, because of that electric thing that's not electric. And again, I think because it was my first movie, I was like,
Horrifying.
okay, sure, this is a movie set. I'm safe.
Yeah, you don't know. You
No.
don't know. Leslie
know.
had one on George of the Jungle where she shows up to work, and then you're here, the lion's right here next to you, and Leslie's like, Who's gonna handle the lion if something happens? Like, what equipment
Yes.
do you have to deal if the lion
Where's
leaves?
the 30-06?
And they're like, no, can't have anything on set. It senses it. So we have nothing. Yeah, and I think in terms of those things, when you look back, you think, I have created dangerous situations because I'm green.
Yeah.
And I didn't have someone to go, don't do that.
Well, by the way, and that extends to a billion things now,
Sure.
Especially at the rate we're evolving, which again, I'm in favor of. I was telling Monica, there was a scene in Without a Paddle where it's like, I pop up out of this weed field and someone's got a laser pointer on my forehead. And in the script, and then I do a terrible Indian accent about training cows for me. And at that time, I didn't even cross my mind. No problem.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. It plays huge. And it's like, oh, wow, that was just in my short little 15-year career.
Yes.
I certainly wouldn't do that now.
Sure.
But anyways, it moves so fast and you really do look back. Now, some of these people that we work with are pieces of shit. Like they have bad intentions and they're dark people. And then a lot of us, I just think, suffer from and the same arrogance that got us in the room going like, well, I understand why this is funny and you will too if I execute this correctly. And then in retrospect, you're a little bit like, yeah, but there's a lot of arrogance going on in my conviction about that.
Yeah.
I
should have said no.
Right, or I just, it's weird. It's the thing that makes you good at it is also your Achilles, obviously. That's probably not unique to our thing, but
because you just want it so bad that you don't have the other conversation.
And you start from a place of, I have a point of view about fucking Seinfeld and traffic. I have a point of view no one has. I have to introduce you to it and bring you into it. And once you see it, you're going to get it and love it. But no one bats 1,000.
Yes. You're going to fail most of the time. I mean, I always say, if I make 3 good movies out of 10, I am rocking this industry.
Right.
Yeah.
But especially I would imagine the way that you shot. Because I once, early on in that same period, I was friends with Shauna, who used to produce with you, Shauna Robertson, who introduced Kristen and I. So in very bizarre ways, you're somehow involved in,
in
this
your life.
romance. Yeah.
If I didn't work with Shauna, Shauna wouldn't work with your wife.
Yeah.
Right, because they met on Sarah Marshall, which you
Yes.
produced. And right when they got back from that is when I met her. I got to go to set of Knocked Up. I was watching you guys shoot the club scene where Craig Robinson.
Okay. Oh, you were there. Danny McBride was there that night too.
Yes, it was a very
Just visiting
It was
that
a very
night.
cool night because I was just visiting Craig Robinson. He must have said 10,000 things to those ladies before he let them in the
I
club,
bet.
right?
Oh.
It was rough. It was rough.
But this is the kind of point people want to ignore is like, to find the appropriate line, you must step over it repeatedly.
Yes.
It's like you throw a bunch of shit at the wall. Everyone collectively agrees, ooh, that one's too far. So let's fail. But in an improv scenario, that you're just watching
It's
it in
real
front of
time.
everyone, right?
Yes, and I was going through drawers a while back, and I found all these little pieces of paper, and they were the pitches from Seth and Evan, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, from that night.
Oh, wow.
So I'm directing, but
Wow.
they would hand me little pieces of paper, with stick them on them, and it would just say like, "I can't let you in. You old as fuck."
Yeah. I remember you yelling. I specifically remember you yelling that.
Yes.
And I had
So
never seen
funny.
anything. Well, I'd only been on 5 sets, but I had certainly never seen that where someone's just in a scene for 12 minutes and then you just tried a million things.
Yeah, and so it's just a sea of abuse back and forth.
Yes.
I remember when Craig came in to audition, and the Office just started. Maybe he was on it once or twice, and so I didn't really know him. And I thought, my God, is this guy riotously funny? Like you don't get any funnier than this. And it is the scene. That's the scene that people mention the most. And
Because he says you're old as fuck. Is that the trigger? What's the trigger?
it's just the doorman. Then it just ends with Leslie screaming doorman,
Right.
and yelling at him. And then she's so mean to him, and then he's like, "I'm sorry. It's just I'm under a lot of pressure."
Oh, yeah.
When he starts talking about the percentages of people he has to let in
all
the
the
club.
hot people he's got to let in.
And so Leslie and I, we go to see Beyonce and Jay-Z at the Rose Bowl.
Of course.
And afterwards, someone says, "You want to go to the party?" And so we go to this party. suddenly Jay-Z walks in and he walks up to me. And he goes like, oh my God, that scene, Doorman with Craig Robbins, that's my favorite scene of all time. We watch it all the time. And he turns to his friend, what did we watch last night? He's like, oh yeah, Knocked Up. And then he's like, can you stay? And because Beyonce's coming. And if you leave, she'll be mad at me. And I'm like, oh my God, I could cause marital problems between Jay-Z and Beyonce right now. And then Leslie walks in. And Beyonce runs to Leslie and goes, oh my God, Doorman. That's our favorite scene.
Yeah.
You know, when you've reached Beyonce and Jay-Z.
Oh, yeah.
It's time to
New levels.
retire.
You got to shut it down.
Yeah.
You got to shut
You
it
got
down.
to all downhill from there.
Yes.
It is really fun, isn't it, when you get kind of compliments from people outside your realm or people you
it's
respect
hysterical.
in some bizarre way. And I can tell you my version of that story, which is still maybe the highlight of my life. I got taken to a Lakers game by my agent, and it was the old Endeavor seats that were directly next to the Lakers bench. So the Lakers bench ends, and the very next seat on this given night was Dax Shepard. I am feeling like I'm on the Lakers because when they come into a huddle on a timeout, I'm right there and I'm listening. And they call one timeout, and they all come back, and they're right next to me, and Colby's standing, and the rest of the guys are sitting, and he's like, Derek, you got to you D up on this. I saw you walked out you're not supposed to be on the arc. Oh, damn. Oh, you a funny motherfucker. Leans in, taps me out, and then goes back to yelling at the guys. And I look at my agent, Greg Seagull's like, I'm on the fucking Lakers right now. I'm on the Lakers.
Oh, that's the best. I had season tickets for years because I was writing a basketball movie. So I got season tickets. So I got to see the
Celtic
whole
pride.
Yes, the whole ride of Kobe from those seats, you know? So Kobe is at the Beyonce show. And he says to my wife, he goes like, you used to go to the games.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Oh my God.
Wow.
You never think anyone to.
But of course, when you put yourself in their shoes, it's like, well, in fact, if I were a Laker, I would be caught staring at Jack Nicholson probably every game. I'd miss a pass just staring at him.
Yeah, that's what I used to do. I'm like, oh my God, there's Penny Marshall again.
Yeah. There's a few people that are there at every game, and you're trying to figure out, what is that person, a real estate developer? You want to know those people.
You want to know all their jobs.
Yes. Don't you find, do you have this too, where it's like, I know I hit the lottery, so I'm constantly, I feel like, how did I end up in this neighborhood? And then when I meet fellow people in my community, it drives me mad. Like, well, how did this dude my age end up getting money for this house? Like Rob McElhenney, and we always talk about this because he lives on a beautiful street in the Palisades, and all of his neighbors are filthy rich. And anytime he meets one of them that's his age, you're like, I don't trust fund. Why? You're like, I hit the lottery. What did you do?
I never think that way.
Wow.
I don't. That's not a thing with me.
It's not a preoccupation.
I more just think about, why do my neighbors not want to talk to me?
Oh, okay.
So I walk around. I take long walks, and I'll see people, and I'm like, why does that person not want to talk to me? Or how come I'm not friends with anyone in this neighborhood? And occasionally I'll knock on someone's door, in the business. You know,
You'll just drop in.
Well, James Corden lives down the street, and so I'm like, why don't I just knock on his door? And so I knock on his door. I'm like, I'm making a joke out of it. I'm gonna stop by unannounced.
Sure.
I go, that's what's about to happen to you living in this neighborhood. And then as a joke, did it again 2 weeks later, just and he's the nicest guy in the world.
Sure.
I love him. And we're at a party, and my wife is talking to his wife, who's very nice, and she's like, yeah, Judd keeps dropping by the house.
He's got some bit.
And my wife's like, I don't think they want you to come over. I'm like, they love it. I think they love it. She's like, are you sure they love it? You should really find out if they really do love it.
Well, now I have and it's regrettable, I'm trying to get over it, but I still have this chip on my shoulder about rich people. So when I see what you're talking about, I go, oh yeah, rich people, liberals, all of us liberals who act so, worried about each other in the community are terrible fucking neighbors. Everyone's got 90-foot hedges.
Yes.
No one ever wants to fucking interact with one another.
Sure.
You would never ask to borrow your neighbor's lawnmower or anything that happened when I grew up.
That's because we saw the Tarantino movie. We know that there's hippies trying to get in.
That's right.
You need a hedge. None of that would happen if you had a hedge.
That's true. Impenetrable hedge.
Exactly.
But you grew up. Your dad was successful, right? He owned restaurants and.
My parents owned a restaurant when I was a kid, and my grandfather owned a record label.
Right.
That my dad worked out. So, we had an interesting experience where we were very upper middle class, and then they got divorced and, drained the funds by being in court for many years.
Yeah.
No one giving in. I don't think they ever settled. I think they both just gave up.
Oh, wow.
After like 10
It was
years.
like nothing to fight for after a while with the bills. Let's split up this $10.
And that's what would happen in my neighborhood. You'd be in a nice house, and then your parents would get divorced, and you'd move into these little condo communities.
Oh, sure.
So if someone moved to like Hidden Ridge, you're like, oh, their parents must have got divorced. They just moved to Hidden Ridge.
Yeah.
Or Fairhaven.
Did you have fear about getting married? Like what my mom married 4 people and my dad married 2. So I had I had a low expectation of marriage.
That's a lot of people to meet.
Oh,
A lot of boyfriends and girlfriends and step relatives.
I prefer the ratio it was flipped. I wish my dad would have had 4 wives and my mom only 2.
Yeah.
Because the dudes coming into your life throughout your life with showing up like, hey, I'm fucking Greg and I got a whole new game plan for this family. And you're like, hold up, Greg. We were doing pretty good the last couple years.
It's funny because I'm working on a movie now with Pete Davidson, and it's basically about his mom, played by Marissa Tomei, suddenly dating Bill Burr. And it is about him trying to ride that relationship.
Yeah.
It's about a lot of things, but what I related to was what I had to deal with as a kid, my parents dating other people. And it was a very, very strange thing, especially when you're little, because no one even talks you through it. No one says to you, hey, by the way, I know this is weird. That's the weirdest part.
Yeah.
No, at least now maybe they do, but back in the 80s, the early 80s, no one said, here's why it's uncomfortable, and here's how we'll work through you realizing that your parents are sexual beings.
Yes, who have needs that need to be
Yes.
met. Having come from that background, when you and Leslie got married, did you like go, oh, I need a different game plan? Or what made you go, I do believe in this thing, I can make this work? Or was it not like that?
I think I more thought about the kids generally because I felt as a little kid and a kid from a divorced family that I didn't feel that, especially my mom wasn't that tuned into my experience.
Mm-hmm.
She was very traumatized by the fact that she was getting divorced. She didn't see that coming in her life, and I think it cracked her a little bit.
Well, she went to work as a hostess at a comedy club, right?
Yes, that's how I first
Got
went to
in
a
there.
comedy club, and because my mom was very middle aged, she just played tennis all day and was just very sweet and into being a mom. And then I think she got very traumatized and angry, and then suddenly she's a waitress, and she was funny in the fact that she came from a successful family, and so when she had to go work, she was not happy.
It was
about
humiliating.
It was humiliating to be suddenly the waitress in town. But as a kid, more what was affecting me was my mom's hatred of this work. And as a little kid, I thought, I think it's kind of cool to be a waitress. Like, I thought it was awesome that my mom was waiting tables and taking care of herself. I just thought it was work to be proud of. Like, I was a busboy and a dishwasher. I didn't think like, oh, this is below her.
Right.
It wasn't really about that to her. I think it was about that she felt like her life had been taken away from her.
Yes.
In some way.
Yes.
By the relationship falling apart. But it made me like hard work. I just thought, I hate that my mom hates this.
Right.
Like, I think that life is hard work, and it's okay to work hard, and all jobs are okay if you hopefully like them.
You stayed with Dad. Were you?
She moved out.
Okay.
My thing
You
was
just
like,
stayed at home.
I'm staying in the house.
I got you.
I don't care who's here.
I got you.
Were you an only child?
I had an older brother and a younger sister.
Got it.
Same
But
setup
my
as me.
sister left with my mom for periods. My brother moved to California. So I was in
Alone
certain
a
periods
lot.
with one sibling or neither of them. Like the whole family just kind of
Yeah.
went bonkers.
It grenaded.
For like 10 or 20 years.
Yeah.
Or you could say forever.
Currently.
Right. Sure.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
So you didn't say to yourself like, oh, I'm going to give this arrangement a shot, despite I've seen it fail, because I want to have kids and kids need that thing. Is that?
I didn't have a concern about marriage from seeing their marriage implode. That's not what stuck with me. I had to more specific thing about them. Like I knew who they were. I didn't think the institution was weird.
Right.
I just thought they really don't
bad
get
actors
along. Yes. And they're not figuring out how to come up with a solution to this. So dad gives mom this much money and she figures out her life, and that we're not constantly at war. The war never ended.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe that they couldn't figure it out. So I always thought this is very specific to them.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I didn't have that. Thank God. I did. That's not what I carried into it. I might have carried into it, I'd like to do this well.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to create a world for my family that's calm, where we solve problems in a healthy way as often as we can.
Yeah.
And to be more tuned into their experience.
Yeah, no, but you met Leslie relatively early in your career.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we were little. Both Leslie and I are very interested in getting sane and being strong and figuring out ways to be healthy and figuring out ways to communicate better. That doesn't mean that we haven't had, you know, difficult moments and stuff that's hard to work out.
Yeah.
But I think our goal is the same. You know, we have an understanding that, you know, we're normal people who came from families who did the best they could, which left us a little screwy. And how do we fix that so that we can feel better and then be better for each other and the family?
Right.
So it's I'm a self-help freak. I've been in therapy since I was 21 years old. I'm obsessed.
Do you have favorites?
I loved like the Harville Hendricks has these books. He used to be on Oprah all the time. And his books have a simple theory, which is basically you have to look at your relationship as an opportunity to find out something about yourself you need to fix. And if you're mad at your spouse because they tell you the thing that you need to fix, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
You have to look at it like that's a gift from each other. You know, someone's putting up a mirror and saying, you're acting weird this way. And you have to go, am I? As opposed to, fuck you.
Yes,
you got to
yes,
go,
yes.
Yeah.
wait a second, why am I doing that?
Right.
And if it's considered a positive thing as often as you can to exchange those things, you have a much better chance of survival than if you're always resenting what comes up for the other person.
And I would imagine the skill set to navigate a marriage that's very identical to a producer, right? Because you're taking these people who are passionate and have a point of view, and they are on fire. You're working with tons of people this is their first project they've written, their first movie they're going to star in. And you need to gently say to them, you're brilliant, that's great. Also, there's no third act. Also, there's no emotional stakes. You know what the ingredients are for something that works, and you've got to help someone get to that without shattering their confidence, making them resentful, all those things. So do you feel like those things parallel each other kind of nicely?
I do, and in both negative and positive ways, or unhealthy and healthy ways. Somewhere I read that when you criticize someone, when you criticize them, you're doing it because you want them to feel better or evolve for themselves. They can hear it if it's done with that kind of love. But when you criticize someone so they'll change to make your life better,
Easier, yeah.
then you're in trouble.
That's the line
Yeah.
that you have to stay on the right
And that's
side of.
I think that's a Gottman thing probably. And that's a tough one. And I think for me, because my parents were in conflict a lot and my mom was a bit manic, you know, when I first started working, I was writing jokes for Roseanne at like 21 years old. It was incredibly comfortable to sit with Roseanne. It felt very familiar, and it was comfortable for her because I knew what she was
role.
going through.
Yeah.
But also I had compassion for her as a very complicated person.
Yes. So you would be a great person to float this theory by. I have wanted to interview her more than anybody because when you look at the explosion of the last project, okay, first of all, it was racist shit. She said there's no excuse for it. I'm not excusing
Yeah.
it. What I'm very fascinated by, here's someone who lightning has struck her like 3 times. And either she doesn't believe people love her and she manifests an outcome where she proves it to herself that they didn't really love her. Now, whether it's they love me, but I don't believe it. What if I do this? What if I sing the national anthem terribly intentionally? That'll weed out who really loves me and who doesn't. If I do this thing, that'll weed out. It's like tests that an insecure person has for their partner. Like, you got to pass this test and then I'll really know you love me. Is it that, or is it I don't deserve this thing. I feel like an imposter. I don't deserve this, and I'm going to somehow subconsciously destroy it.
I think it's probably even more complicated than that in ways that we probably don't even have enough information to judge. Because I interviewed her for my book. You know, I did this book of interviews, Sick in the Head.
Yeah.
And I had an amazing talk with her. The kind of talk I had never had with her, even as someone who's known her a little bit for a very long time, where I just asked her how she felt and what happened when you did Roseanne the first time.
Right.
Because the interview was before she did it the second time.
Right.
Like, what were you going through?
Yeah.
And she said, you know, I have mental illness.
Right.
So you're asking me
Yeah.
to go straight from like the kitchen and then the road to managing hundreds of people. And I can't manage myself.
And
I'm
it's-
paraphrasing, by the way.
Sure.
But so she's like, of course I'm going to flip out. I'm not built to do it.
Yeah.
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 And I had a lot of compassion for that. But I think she has very serious issues. She was telling me that when she grew up, she was raised by very religious Jewish people, many survivors of the Holocaust, and that she was deeply traumatized from a very early age by their constant discussion of the Holocaust.
Sure.
Wow, yeah.
From like the moment she could speak, the terror it created. And then she had
Generational trauma, right?
Yes, and she's had all sorts of trauma.
Yes.
And so it's hard to subscribe any of it to she's trying to blow it up, because it's also connected to the Holocaust and Israel and the protection of the Jews and what fears come up, rational or irrational.
Oh, do you think her right-wingness is Israel driven?
A lot of it seems to be. But when I first met her, she was very feminist, almost like punk.
Yeah.
Feminist.
Yeah, that's the person I was introduced to.
And so at some point, her inclination for that to be her highest value became not her highest value.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know how much of that is.
I just don't know that if your average listener understands the enigma that was the second TV show.
Yes.
Like, they got 25 million viewers or something. I mean, they quintupled what any show has gotten in the last 15 years. It couldn't be a bigger thing. And to watch somebody lose that, again, I'm not excusing anything she said or justifying it. I'm just saying I feel bad for somebody who would get something so precious and then lose it immediately. Just on some level, I go, oh, that person needed some kind of help.
Absolutely. I mean, it's related to a complicated person who has a real mental illness.
Right.
And a lot of trauma. And so I never look at it like this is a healthy, mean person.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I just don't think it applies to that at all. And to think about it deeply requires an enormous amount of compassion for her and her journey. And yes, it's terrible that anyone gets hurt by things that she says, and a lot of the things that she says are clearly awful and wrong.
Yeah.
But I also just think of her as this woman who's been through so much, who's given so much, who's struggling, and it's coming out, her struggle's coming out in these demented ways.
Yeah. I will say, though, if I imagine myself being black and listening to what I'm saying, I can hear myself going like, oh, yeah, when someone's a racist you like, they have a mental health issue. Or when a shooter goes and kills a bunch of Muslims, oh, that person had mental health. So, you know.
They probably do. I mean, that's just
it's
you should
complicated,
just give everybody some benefit of the doubt that there's more going on than face value.
Well, yes. I mean, and that's a whole other question, which is anybody who turns violent is probably struggling with some sort of mental health issue. To what extent are people purely evil or actually ill and broken in some way that leads to violent choices?
Yeah.
And that's a hard discussion to have.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's why no one does it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, in a nutshell.
Yeah, because a lot of those people, there's something really going wrong, and it's not that simple.
Well, I can admit my own the own limits of my empathy. Like, Monica and I watched 3 white nationalist documentaries in a row on Netflix.
Yeah.
They're really, really great. I had to admit after the fact, when I watched the guy that they've captured that joined ISIS, I'm like, oh, that guy's just evil and he wants to kill me, and I don't know that person can be fixed. All right, that's how I feel, honestly. I'm watching these white nationalists, and I'm going, dude, these were the guys in my high school that no one ever talked to one time, had 0 friends. They would have fucking adopted any ideology to have someone to talk to. So I'm already finding my way to have compassion for them. And clearly it's just because they're white. I think it's just like my own primitive monkey brain somehow identifies with them. That's the length of my empathy. And I can start to see, oh, this is a tragically lonely person who's now doing this vile, horrendous thing. But I think the motivation's friendship, bizarrely, family. And connection.
Yeah.
And I said to Monica, wow, I really have to work on extending that the guy who joined ISIS is likely the same exact person. And
there's a religious aspect to it.
Yes,
Yeah.
there is religious.
When people think there's a religious reward for violence, and if you've been trained from birth to believe
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
I mean, there are some people who pick up that part later.
Yes.
It's we all know from being parents, if I said the same ideas to my kid wall to wall, the entire ride,
Yeah.
they're capable of anything.
Yes.
But
I
speaking of
appreciate
that, actually, because you said that your parents said life isn't fair, or that's really the only. So do you think being told that over and over again, you have that philosophy still?
I
Or you
think
try
on
to-
some level, I'm always fighting against the abyss of that spiritual void
Yeah.
that I was given. They didn't just not take me to temple. They did not replace it with anything.
Yeah.
There was no Buddhist discussion because the people weren't even talking about Buddhism back in the 70s.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a philosophy. They were kind people who were nice to everyone in the world. And so that's why hopefully I'm a nice person, just mirroring how they interact with the world. But when you have nothing, I think it spins you out. So you spend the rest of your life going, what can I fill that with?
Well, right. In addiction, we say, you have a God-shaped hole and you just shovel everything into it and it's just not going to plug that hole. No, I don't believe in God, but I've found other things that I feel like plug the God-shaped hole.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm always at. Like, it is like Shandling's, says he saw something on the other side when he had a near-death experience.
Yeah.
I'm more like that guy. Like, someone tells me a ghost story. I'm like, good, okay, at least I'm a ghost.
Yeah.
And I'm desperately looking for something. And I'm trying to, let go of even that, which is hard.
Yeah. So even the fact that you worked with Roseanne, you also wrote a couple of Tom specials in that
Yes,
same period,
sure.
right? And then, so many different personality types and characters that you've been able to be fruitful with. Are you a chameleon? Did you start as a chameleon? And then as you become crazy successful, are you less of a chameleon?
I think the journey for me was, I wasn't sure who I was. I wasn't sure what my voice was, but I was able to mirror other people's voices. I could sit with Jim Carrey and write sketches for In Living Color with him and work with Ben and figure out, what his style was. And then at some point from working with Gary, watching how Gary mined his personality and his experience, I realized, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do, but I think I'm not interesting. I don't think my life has been that interesting, and I don't think my point of view is that interesting, and that was my block for a long time.
What era is this that you're feeling that way?
In the 90s, in the late 90s, and so I'm working with Gary, and I'm seeing how he's doing it, and I'm very impressed, but I just thought, I'm not interesting like Gary. And then I worked on Freaks and Geeks with Paul Feig. And Paul Feig he's digging deep into all his stuff. And slowly I realized, some of my stories apply to these characters.
Right.
So Paul's parents didn't get divorced, but my parents got divorced. So I could talk to everyone about how I became obsessed with juggling and so I became obsessed with that. And so we did an episode where Sam Levine's dad's cheating on his mom, and he deals with it by becoming obsessed with ventriloquism. And then, we had Martin Starr being a latchkey kid, coming home alone and just watching Shandling on Dinah Shore. And we see what it's like to just be lonely and just watching comics on TV. And I started putting those things on the show. And Jake Kasdan said to me once, Jake, obviously, and he said, I think that's the best thing you ever did, was that scene where Bill watches Gary Shandling alone in his house. And that was a big moment for me, like, oh, maybe it is interesting. That led to, the 40-Year-Old Virgin is clearly not my life, but I really related to the shame of feeling like you're a freak and that no one likes you and no one wants to connect with you.
Right.
You know, obviously with Knocked Up and This Is 40, I'm beginning to mind more stuff.
I would say that now you are a brand, or you are a point of view from that point on. It seems like.
Yes,
me.
whether things are from my life or not from my life, I think I figured out what my sensibility is.
Just the lens you're looking through, regardless of the.
Yeah. So even in the Pete Davidson movie I'm doing now, it's in there in some ways. And I'm still doing the thing that I did writing for Roseanne with someone like Pete Davidson. I'm sitting with him for years discussing his life. How do we make a movie out of this? But there's more of me in that exploration. It's hard. I mean, I met Warren Zevon once and we were talking and he said, the best thing you could do in your life is tell people your story. And I realized, oh yeah, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out how do we tell our story, even if it's fictional, even if it's just inspiration for a different story.
Yeah.
That's the journey.
But I could see it being uniquely challenging for you because from a super early age, you start getting obsessed with other people's point of views. You can kind of get lost in everyone else's. And as you say, you're kind of adopting their thing as you write for them. And that's kind of your skill set. So it's like when you recognize your skill set is being flexible and being able to take that on, I think it'd be specifically or uniquely hard for you to believe, oh no, I have my own thing.
Yes, it was very hard. It remains. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I do stand-up comedy is I have to stay in touch with who I am because it's very easy for me to dismiss that.
Yeah. Now, look, I've never seen you do stand-up. I know you do stand-up because I've heard that you go on the road with people.
Yes. There's a Netflix special you can
Check
yours.
it out.
huddle up tonight.
What's it called?
It's called The Return.
The Return. I imagine if you had your druthers, if you had mapped out your life and you got exactly what you wanted, that you would be Jerry Seinfeld. You've almost singularly wanted to be a stand-up, right?
That was my original goal. And there was definitely a moment where I just thought, I just think these guys around me are more interesting people. They're just interesting creatures. I'm not interesting in this way.
Right.
So I'm hanging around in my early 20s with Jim Carrey and Sandler and David Spade and Rob Schneider and Farley and
Not confidence building guys to hang around with.
Yes, it's I always say it's like if you started a band and your buddy was U2.
Right.
It took me a long time to realize that I have something to offer and I don't have to be those guys. And now that I'm older, I just have stories to tell.
Right.
And experience. As a young guy, I wasn't that unique and I didn't have any stories or point of view.
Well, you hadn't really lived a life yet that maybe.
But if Roseanne told me her point of view, I could write it all day.
Yes.
As soon as I knew what it was.
Are you able to feel now that you are them? Like you've contributed?
No, not at all. Not zero. Thank God, because that's the thing that keeps you
Gets
going.
Yeah.
In the morning is the lack of self-esteem is such a great motivator. I mean, you need both self-esteem and lack of self-esteem. So the feeling I have, like lately, I have a real feeling of all the work disappearing into just like a digital black hole. You know, like, does a kid today who's 16, will he ever see the 40-Year-Old Virgin?
Right.
Right.
And so the fact that I feel like it's disappearing like an old Al Jolson movie makes me want to make another new one for this moment.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Now, okay, really quick on your creative process. I, for years, wrote from a place of, you're a lazy piece of shit. You're a waste of skin unless you start typing. I've always aspired to working from a place where like, oh, I have some fun to share and I want to sit down and do it.
Yeah.
I've not found a way to work that way. Do you have a thing that, well, you just kind of winked at it, which is you wake up going, well, I'm a piece of shit if I don't create this thing, or my self-esteem is such that I need to do this to validate myself. Has yours evolved over the years? Has it gotten any kinder to yourself, or do you aspire for it to be kinder to yourself?
I'm trying to make it evolve. And it probably has evolved a little bit. I still, fear sitting down in front of the computer or looking at a legal pad. Every time you do, you're going to find out if you're good or not. And it's a really bad way to look at it. Like, today I find out if I have value. And so I'm very fascinated by books about athletes, about flow. It's like Michael Jordan, and he doesn't have to think. It's like he just knows what to do. And there are creative states of flow where you feel hooked into the creativity of the universe. It's like Bob Dylan, in like 4 years, he wrote like 200 songs. And you have those moments where you feel something outside of yourself coming to you. And for me, it is the only connection to the idea of spirituality or God is in the moment when I have an idea.
Right, that seemingly wasn't yours 5 minutes ago.
And it could be a dick joke. I could just be like, oh my God, like I feel a part of everything, the fabric of the universe. So when I'm trying to not be insane, I try to remind myself like writing comes from a certain state of being open and relaxing and not wanting it and not being in your ego. That's why you think of things in the shower and you think of things when you're walking with your friend.
For me, a massage. If I get a foot massage, if I can't get some part of some story, I'll go get the $20 foot massage.
Yes.
And invariably, I'm sitting there and I forget about the stupid project. And then I just blink my eyes and all of a sudden I have this like pretty fleshed out idea. And I don't know where the fuck it just
And then
pops in.
you say goodbye to Robert Kraft on the way out.
Exactly.
I pay for I tip Robert's guy because I know he's not a good tipper, and then I keep it moving.
But if I mean that's what you're trying to get to as a creative person, to that flow. You know, it's hard. That's why writers' rooms are fun on sitcoms because you're just in a big conversation,
Right?
And you're not alone going like, "Come to me, idea. Come, I need it now." Like it's. I think a lot of writing, just for any writers out there, is just you have to give yourself time where you just start typing, you judge nothing, and you just don't stop typing. Anything like I'm sitting here in the room, I want to kill myself. Nothing's coming. Oh my God, why is my cat doing that? I had a cat when I was 8. What happened to that cat? Oh yeah, that cat got run over by the FedEx guy because mom opened the door, and suddenly just stuff like a journey begins,
Right?
Because you don't stop. You just let your mind just spew, and then if you really did that consistently, somewhere in it is either like a great joke for your act or a great story for a movie.
Your eye for talent is insane. It's really, I mean, other than Lauren Michaels, I can't think of someone else who like somehow could recognize who was brilliant and who wasn't. Where do you think that comes from? Is it the 10,000 hours of watching other brilliant people and isolating what that X factor is or what that unique thing is? Like, how are you able to look at Seth and Evan and go, oh, for sure, those guys are going to be able to do this?
I'm not sure. Like Seth was just this weird guy from Canada. I mean, someone just sent me a tape of like 40 kids from Vancouver. And then Seth's there reading the scene. And I just thought, I don't know what that is, but I want to watch that. And then we met Seth and he read and he was super funny. And we said, every group in high school's got one of those guys.
Yes.
So it starts with that. Like, we need like that sarcastic energy. Like that's a original presence I have not seen on TV, but I lived with as a kid.
Right. It felt very true.
Yes. And then you get to know him and suddenly you realize, oh my God, this guy has a huge heart. Oh, he's a sweetheart guy. And he's so smart and funny. And when we can't figure out how to fix a scene, his suggestions are generally correct.
Right.
Oh, when we do improv with him about a scene, his instincts are amazing.
Yeah.
And then when we did Undeclared, I wanted to work with Seth again. I thought, we should just make him a writer on the show. And people are like, well, he's 18 years old. I'm like, yeah, but I think he might be as good or better than everyone on this show. And so it reveals itself.
Right.
In some way. It's not instantaneous. So Jonah was in 40-Year-Old Virgin. He has one 90-second scene. But in that day, we were like, I think this guy might be a genius.
Right.
And then you just put him in Knocked Up. And that's generally how it would go.
Well, I told this story when I had a sister on here. One of my great regrets. I have a few career regrets. And one of them being is after that 90-second scene, I happened to have lunch with he and Shauna. And I just met him. I'd only seen him in that 90-second scene. And he goes, I love your stuff. I want you to be in all my movies. And I was like, all your movies? What are you talking? Like, what are you talking about now? I should have said I would love to.
That's the delusion of youth.
Yes. Which is awesome. And I'm glad he got the last laugh and I was the idiot. It should have been like, yes, I will hook my cart to your train.
You could have been skateboarding in mid-90s.
I loved that movie. Did you see it?
Oh, it's fantastic.
Oh, it's so incredible, mid-90s.
And that's the thing that I'm most excited about with everyone is like Jonah's, writing and directing, and Seth and Evan are writing and directing.
Yeah. Well, do you find this? Because I found it in a much smaller capacity, but in the few movies I've directed that I've got to give people chances to be in movies that hadn't been in movies previously, or Monica and Rob and I can't internalize my own accomplishments, for better or worse, probably for better, to keep me motivated, but I can internalize their opportunities
Sure.
in a way that is so fulfilling.
we're not responsible for any of it, but we always loved Jonah, and as a result, due to some weird sliding doors thing, he's in Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
So there is a parental or family feeling. It's similar to Maude being on Euphoria. You have nothing to do with it, but you just feel proud.
But you're a part of the story in a significant way. So that was one of my other questions is it heartbreaking when people go their own way? Even if it's expected.
Yeah, it's brutal.
It's brutal
because all the groups drift. I've had to make that adjustment. As a child of divorce, I project a lot of stuff onto it because I want everyone to stay together.
Yeah.
And I also feel like we all have magic together. And so there is magic elsewhere, but there's a very special kind of magic when we collaborate. So I always want to be in the cycle. Like, maybe we're all not going to do everything together, but 1 out of 5 or 6, we should do it. We should do it because this, I feel that way about Will and Adam. I love everything that they both do, but you want there to be in the cycle.
Yeah.
Because no one else can do that. So I find all of it weird. I find the transitory nature of show business hard.
Yes.
I don't like that I just made the Pete Davidson movie with all these people. So I meet a whole bunch of new people,
Yeah.
And
it's like camp, right? Over
and then
over
camp ends.
Yeah.
So it's not like one person is the break. It's like the whole business is the break.
Yes.
I miss every person on everything I did. The talks you would have on set of, I don't know, Kenan Thompson was 16 years old when we did Heavyweights. Me and Brill adored him. We were just like, this is the coolest, funniest guy ever.
Yeah.
And, on Cable Guy, Jack Black was in Cable Guy and Owen. So it's almost like that version of people you miss. I'm so sad that I don't get to sit every day with Pete Holmes and kick around crashing ideas.
Yeah.
So in a weird way, it's constant grief.
Yeah.
It really is. And because I do a bunch of things, it's a lot of grief because I'm not sitting around writing love episodes with Paul Russ today.
Yeah.
And I
we
also
loved Love, by the way. Leslie's an old
thanks.
friend of
Yes.
mine. And,
we really went down a rabbit hole with love.
It made us lovesick. Like it really
and
was
Chris
emotionally
Chris
wonderful.
Witowski. My God,
Yeah.
this is so funny.
Yeah.
And it is like, it's like Buddhism. There's life and then there's death. And these projects are like that.
Yeah.
And these relationships are morphing and changing. And I'm kind of a hoarder. Like if you come to my house, like I'm not like a crazy hoarder, but I save everything from everything.
Well, the fact that you still have those tapes was telling to me.
Oh yeah,
Well, how
your
could he ever get
interviews.
rid of those?
Well, I would. I'm
What?
the kind of person that's just like, I'd rather not see anything. I just want to throw everything away. It's just a different kind of mentality.
I found a tape. I was doing the Shandling documentary, and I remember Gary was building a house, and he thought it would be a funny HBO special to show the entire process because he's like, I'm going to wind up in lawsuits with all the contractors. Let's just start taping it. We'll just keep visiting the site. So we did it a few times, and it was hilarious. And then he stopped doing it because he really did get into lawsuits with everybody. And then I had an old tape from 1991 of Roseanne doing stand-up at the Improv, like a high 8 tape, because I was helping her with her act. And then at the end of that tape, there's Gary on the construction site. And it's him, and in the background, he's just kind of quietly pointing out that no one's working. And he's going like, see those guys over there? They're not doing anything. And it's in the Shandling doc. So, but my whole personality is to not want things to change.
Right.
So that, I think, is the lesson for me, to wish everyone well and to not hold on too tight because you can't.
It's just not the nature of how things work.
Yeah.
You're setting yourself up for heartbreak, resentment, all those things.
Yeah.
Do you find, it doesn't appear so because you've had great titles. Of the many reasons I'm jealous of Tarantino, one of them is his fucking ability to title something is so uniquely great.
Yeah.
Do you struggle with titles?
I've gotten lucky because some things just hit you like, oh, knocked up.
Sure.
Oh, I guess that works. Or the 40-year-old virgin, just say what it is.
Yes.
This is 40.
Right.
But we've made mistakes. Like one mistake we made, we had this great movie with Jason Segel called The 5-Year Engagement. And it should have been just called The Engagement or something. But people heard the number 5. And I'm like this when I hear titles. I think, oh, I got to go through 5 years of this.
Right. Or 4 Christmases. Like, as soon as I see the first Christmas, I'm like, oh, there's 3 more. And I get obsessed OCD
interesting.
about, will they all be the same amount of time?
I know. I track that too. I'm so like that.
Yeah.
It bugs me.
Yeah.
Or especially it's like 7.
Hello.
Oh, Wayne Fetterman is here.
Hi.
Is it over? Nice to see you.
Almost.
Nice to see you.
It's not.
Yeah.
Wayne's got
Monica.
Wayne's got a podcast called The History of Stand-Up, which is very good. Anyway, that was a movie where we thought, I think we messed up that title, and The Big Sick was one where like, does anyone want to be sick?
Right.
And then we're like, we can't top it. I mean, I like it. There's a lot of that. I like
Yes.
it.
Right.
But do you want to avoid sickness?
Well, can I tell you
That's
the
true.
time? You always go back and through revisionist history, you're a genius, right? The Monday morning quarterbacking, right? So now you're going, well, 5 year, and maybe you had those inklings then, but I can tell you one where it's like, I went to an early screening of Frozen, and I sat between Lassiter and Kristen, and I watched the movie. I was like, oh, this is a tremendous movie. And I remember thinking, no, Frozen. People don't want to be cold. This is a bad title. Who wants to be cold? And I was adamant about that. I had full conviction that was a terrible title.
And you fought them hard.
No, I didn't fight anyone. I remember saying to my agent, I don't know about Frozen as a
Maybe
title.
it is a bad title, but the movie is
Maybe
so
it would have
good.
That's
maybe it would have
true.
been $2 billion if it was called something else instead of a measly 1.2.
Wayne actually, when I came to LA in 1985 to go to USC, I was 17 years old. The first day I went to the Laugh Factory because I had written some articles for Laugh Factory magazine, and Wayne was the first person I met.
That's kind of, I think, how you end up evaluating people. I do, at least in life. When you find out they've got like 11,000 burnt bridges, you're like, well, it might be them. Maybe
Right.
they're holding the gas
It's
can. and
David
the blowtorch.
Crosby's fault.
Yes.
There's that moment in the David Crosby documentary, which is amazing. And he's talking about how like everyone's mad at him. He's not friends with anyone in Crosby, Stills, Nash
Right.
Young. Like everyone's mad at him. He says, normally I would say it was them. He's like, but because it's everyone, it must be me.
Must be the common
Yeah.
denominator.
That's great.
Well, that brings me to one thing I just wanted to I basically just say thanks for, which is we're friends with Scott and Seth, and your documentary about the
Oh,
Avett Brothers
yeah.
is so awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
It just
love them.
It's like, I don't even know what adjectives to use to describe it, but it is like this little fairy tale of a world that they live in and create in and live in. It's there's something 70s about it.
It's so interesting. If anyone wants to see it, it's on HBO streaming, as is the Shandling
And it's
doc.
called May It Last.
It's called May It Last. So Rick Rubin said to me, you've used some of their music, but they're making a new record soon. Maybe you should, document it somehow. So we have no plan at all. And I don't know them at all.
Okay.
And me and my friend Michael.
But you were fans of their music?
I like their
Fan of
music,
okay.
but I wasn't like crazed. And so Rick Rubin says, I don't know, there's something about these guys. Life is better when you're around them. And
That's wow. What a
and I
compliment.
said, okay. So my friend Michael Bonfiglio, who I did directed the Dwight Gooden, Daryl Strawberry 30 for 30 with, he went down and recorded them playing their new songs for each other.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's two brothers, they sit down like, hey, I'm working on this. What are you working on? And they do it in this little recording studio, which was like in a church. And we just did an experimental shoot. And it was just magic.
Yeah.
And then for 2 years, just with my own money, I didn't even know if we would turn it into anything.
Yeah.
I just kept sending Mike to different places to record them. And we realized there's no story here because they're just nice.
Yeah.
And then we realized that that's what it was about. It is about two brothers who love each other and the creative process. And it's not about that they all suddenly go to war. And then that became very engaging and dramatic in its own way, how they love and support each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're really great. Again, sad it's over.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's fun to have a reason to follow them around.
Totally. If I didn't have two kids, I've said to Seth, like still one of my fantasies I've never got to live out is like, I just want to be on your bus for a few cities. I don't need to do anything other than like drink coffee in there with you guys and maybe sleep in a bunk. I just really want that experience before I die.
I think you're going to get it.
Well, when these kids, I hope they play when they're older because I got to wait till these kids are out of the house.
See, my kids are old now. My daughter's 16 and she turns 17 in a couple of weeks, and Maud is, an adult, I guess. And so Leslie and I are like, I think we could start doing those things. It's just happening now. Like,
yeah.
Leslie went to Mexico during the week.
Oh my God.
She just went to Mexico for like 5 days. I'm like, we can do that.
Yeah, normally
now.
you'd have to have a terminal disease to do that, right? You're not allowed to
shut
just
everything
do
down.
something for yourself. What kind of thoughts did you have? Because, there's all these varying levels. Like, I talk about my kids on here a lot, which already, that came with its own, like, should I, shouldn't I? You play these games in your head. You're trying to make both sides of the argument, make sure you make the right decision. But when they express an interest to be in your movies, what is what do you and Leslie go through? Is it immediately like, fuck yeah, this is fun, this family or a family business? If we made shoes, they'd be on the floor selling them. What is the process by which you decide whether or not to do it?
Well, they didn't show any interest in doing it.
Oh, that helps.
I just didn't want to do it with other people's kids. So I just thought, I've worked with so many like kid actors and their parents, and some of them are nice, but some of them are a nightmare. And also in movies, when people have kids, it never seems like they're kids.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was my main thing. It's like, it always looks like a weird stranger.
Yeah.
So I just thought it would just seem better. And in the beginning, it was literally just strapping them into chairs, having conversations around them, and then they don't even realize the cameras are there after 5 minutes, and they just start talking.
Right.
And I had seen this movie by the Safdie brothers that Lena Dunham showed me called Daddy Longlegs. And it's this guy, and he's with I think like a 6-year-old. The whole movie is like him and this kid. And I think in real life it's his kid.
Right.
But they found a way to tell a whole story, and clearly the kid isn't even acting the whole movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's just real. Whatever happened, they went with it.
Sure.
And I think that inspired me that you could do that in movies.
Right.
And then at some point you have to ask them, like, do you want to do this?
Right.
And
You're in SAG now, and
Yes.
you have a savings account. That part's cool.
I'm stealing all this money from you. Then they tell you if they like it. or
Okay.
not. And at some point they said that they did like it. And then you also have to go, are they good?
Sure.
Right.
Jamming my kids into the movies and then I realize they're not good.
Right.
And luckily, you never know as a parent, but they seem to be.
Because what's interesting is I'll take the other side of the argument. Like I remember being on Favreau's show, Dinner for Five. Do you remember that show?
I did that.
And
That's where I met Paul Rudd.
Really?
On that show.
Oh, no kidding. Well, that was fruitful. But Tim Blake Nelson was on.
Sure.
And he was saying that he gets really embarrassed when he gets stopped by people in front of his kids. Now, I don't like getting stopped because just that's my time with my kids. I don't want to interact with anyone but my kids. But that wasn't his reason. He found it to be very embarrassing that he would be being recognized for this, what is a silly job, basically. Like he's not a doctor or something. And I said, that's bonkers. It's one of the hardest jobs you could ever find employment in. You should really feel proud of the fact that you make a living doing this. I think that's incredibly esteemable. But then it went into like he would not want his kids to act. And I at that time took the position of like, well, I've had all the other jobs, and I can promise you that this acting one is about as good as it fucking gets.
That's how I always felt. I always felt if you can escape and do this,
if
and
you're
you
not
want
on a
to,
roof in Detroit in the winter doing rubber roof, you're fucking winning.
Sure. But you do get scared. Like, what if they're not good? What if they're so needy and insecure that this hurts them in some way? Because most people fail. Yeah. And there's a lot in the business that destroys you if you're not strong.
Yeah. Well, it makes you or breaks you.
Yes, for sure. So, I try to float above it now a little bit and go, well, if you want to. But generally, I preach this business is easier if you also learn how to write, direct, and produce. And you can just keep switching gears. If you're not getting an acting job, go sit and write. And if you know how to do that, it's a fun career. If you're just waiting on someone to give you a gig,
give you a phone call,
it's hellish. If you're waiting on Carl's Jr. to tell you if you got the commercial.
Yeah. If your entire life is in the hands of a marketing department that doesn't understand it, you're...
Exactly.
It's very dangerous.
So that's what I tell them, and they seem to be going with it. And generally, I just think about Jake Kasdan. I just go,
yeah.
His dad's Lawrence Kasdan. Jake's the greatest guy in the world, the most talented guy in the world.
Yeah.
Somehow it's possible.
Yeah.
Did she have fun on Euphoria?
She did. She did. She worked on a movie called Assassination Nation with Sam Levinson.
Oh.
That show's incredible euphoria, I think.
I'm on episode 3. I'll let you know when I finish. I'm scared. I'm a parent. I go
Yes.
slow.
I know.
I go
It's-
slow.
It's
you know
intense.
You know what the breakthrough for me was? Because I have 2 daughters as well. And I was like, oh, yeah. It's scary. Even as an ex-drug addict who got navigated out of it, it's still scary. But I had to remember watching Less Than Zero. And I was like, I was able at my age then to recognize Less Than Zero was a very heightened world, but that the emotional truths were real. And that was the appeal, not the suck dick for crack or whatever.
Yeah, I think that it's a very strong anti-bad behavior message. And kids get that. It's
Yes.
the same
Yeah.
reason why people love Billie Eilish right now. I think there are certain artists expressing the anxiety and the tension of this moment, what it's like to be young in this age.
Yeah.
In a very raw way that isn't exactly how we felt. I was more of a Fast Times at Ridgemont High
Yes.
Yeah.
kind of person or diner.
Yeah.
Those were my touchstones.
Now, Pete Davidson, I've never met him. He just has this magical thing where you kind of love him. Did his dad died in 9/11?
Yes, his dad was a fireman.
A fireman in 9/11.
Who died on 9/11. And he's a sweetheart guy that's been through more than anyone you know.
Yeah.
And it's a very unique experience to be the child of someone that died on 9/11. Because
Absolutely.
it's not just your grief, it's the world's grief.
Yes.
And it never ends in a way. People are always talking about it. Like my mom died. So she died 11 years ago, but no one talks about it.
No.
It doesn't come up.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a complicated experience that only a few people understand.
Yeah.
That when you're directly tied into that national trauma, and then you have your personal family trauma at the same time.
Yes.
And so Pete has been very brave to write about it, both in his stand-up hilariously and darkly, in a way that people have responded to, and you realize, this is how he survived as he developed this creativity around it. I mean, he was an amazing stand-up at 17, 18 years old, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
And then he was very brave sitting with me and his partner, Dave Cyrus, crafting a story that isn't a true story, but is inspired by all of his feelings about this and all the ways that he's trying to heal from it.
Yeah.
And he's definitely one of those people that the whole world, is rooting for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
You
going to
feel
say,
him.
are you drawn into the God, I want to be in his life to help in whatever way I can?
I mean, I think I always have that inclination to collaborate with people who have a story to tell, who have wounds, who are trying to work through something. Because even my movies, when I'm making movies that are my personal movies, I know I'm making them to work through issues. Mm-hmm. With a lot of the movies, I think what I'm doing unconsciously, but now I think more consciously, is writing what health would look like and a path to get there.
Yeah. Sure.
So at the end of Trainwreck, she learns some lessons about herself that changes her. But what would have to go wrong for her to be forced to learn those lessons? And I think a lot of my movies tend to be developed with that in mind.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we've had a guest on where I started listing stuff you've done. I was like, I'm not even going to really do
Oh my gosh.
And even
I know.
having known you for 15 years and obviously knowing what you did, I still would be like, oh, that's right. He directed Trainwreck.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Bridesmaid. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Both Anchormans, whatever. Incredible career. Clearly a genius for being able to help a lot of different people with points of view come to a productive output of it. It's a very cool thing. I doubt you give yourself credit for it, but I'll give it to you publicly. It's really impressive. You're a peach. I love you. I hope you'll come back. Is there a date? I know there's not a title, but is there a
It's June
date?
19th is the
June 19th.
unknown title movie.
Well, that's
Great.
a great date, though.
Yeah. And then, it's Gary Shandling's book if you're interested in his life. And,
Yes.
and the Gary Goldman HBO special starts airing October 5th.
Okay, great. And lastly, the Comedians in Cars with Shanley. It's my favorite show, and I can't get the title right. But comedians getting coffee in cars.
Yes. With sugar and coffee. No, it's amazing. And it's amazing because it is there were so many things Gary wanted to say to the world, and he found a weird place to do it with his friend.
Yeah.
And it does become an odd goodbye.
There's a sweet, bittersweet sweet bittersweetness to that. There's your title, by the way, Sweet
Yes.
Bittersweetness for your
And speaking of holding on to things, because I was very moved. There's a moment where they're talking about David Brenner dying, and Jerry Seinfeld says, but don't you ever think about those jokes? Like, what happens to all those jokes?
Yeah.
And Gary says, those jokes were just an expression of his spirit. And Jerry's like, but the jokes, and the jokes. And Gary's like, isn't that enough? That's the reason you're alive. I'm paraphrasing again, but it's an amazing exchange. But it is about hoarding versus letting go.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. All right. Well,
thank you for
what a
having me.
pleasure. Thanks for driving
Thanks.
across the country to get here.
It was a pleasure. I'll get back to working on your house.
And now my favorite part of the show, the fact check with my soulmate, Monica Padman. When I get that feeling, I want factual healing.
Oh, yeah.
Factual healing, all right. Makes me feel so fine. Helps to relieve my mind. Factual healing, baby, is good for me.
Oh my gosh.
Factual
We haven't had a song in a while.
healing, something that's good
Oh,
for me.
Keeps going.
Well, I wanted to read all the lyrics that PMMMCC Combs wrote to me.
Puffy Combs.
Oh my gosh, it was Puffy Combs. No, it's actually PMMCCOMBS on Instagram.
I think it's Puffy.
P. Diddy Combs?
I love P. Diddy.
You do? What? Tell me why. What is it you love about him?
Well, I like his songs. I like his Making the Band show. God, I loved that show.
Oh, I didn't watch it.
Oh my God, it was a good show. And I tried to learn the dance on my own.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
And did you succeed?
Kind of.
I'd love to see it.
I don't remember it.
Oh, okay.
What about Shake Your Tail Feather?
How's that one go? Bend over, let me see you shake your tail feather. Bend
Well,
over.
no,
let me...
this
Did
is-
you see me shaking my tail
I
feather?
do. I see. I do.
So gross because I'm on my side.
Yeah, you're in
It's
a
so
good position
vulnerable.
for a fart.
Yeah, it's very prone.
Yeah. So we had Judd Apatow on.
Judd Apatow.
Oh, wait, before we talk about Judd.
Okay.
So Brett Weinstein emailed me back.
Okay.
And he said, do you mean literally false, metaphorically true?
Metaphorically true. That's his statement.
Well, the whole thing is literally false, metaphorically true.
Oh, literally false, metaphorically true. Huh.
Yeah.
That seems like a lot of words.
Well,
I thought he just, yeah, great. I don't want to fight with you. I remember saying these are metaphorical truths when I was talking to him. So I'm just wondering if he's added those words and that he's added those two first words
maybe.
to the thing that we talked about on the podcast. But it's
It's probably just his general thought on it. Literally false, metaphorically true. And maybe when he
Oh, literally false, comma.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
What do you-
You said it as one thing. Literally false, metaphorically true. I was like, I don't remember it being 4 words, but literally false, comma, metaphorically true.
Yeah.
Now I'm on board.
So that is what it was.
Okay. How was your drive out here? We're live from the set of
Oh, yeah. We're on a
ABC's Bless This
field
Mess,
trip.
which just got ordered today for more episodes. If you're a fan of the show, there'll be 5 or 6 more coming on the backside of that 13.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Congratulations to the crew and all the great actors that got us in that situation.
Like you. You're one of those.
I'm the straight man.
No.
I am. I was just talking about it yesterday with one of the directors. It is almost the first time in my career where I am the bona fide straight man.
Yeah.
And everyone else gets to be real funny around me.
Charactery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just most of the time working for me, I was doing that.
Yeah, that's true.
And now I'm like Jason Bateman in Arrested Development.
Do you have some insecurity about that?
No, I like it.
You do?
Yeah, I like generally I always felt like that was on my shoulders in a scene.
Yeah.
Like to deliver something crazy or funny, or the scene wouldn't be crazy or funny. Now I'm like, oh, not my problem.
Yeah.
This is Keckner is going to do this. And then he does it, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, that's true.
I get a front row seat, and none of it's on my plate.
Yeah. Being the straight man, though, for people who don't know, if they're not in comedy, there's generally two characters, a straight man and a character.
Crazy person.
Yeah. And the straight man is there to sort of bounce off and sort of reflect normalcy.
The audience.
Yep. And it's actually very hard to do. It's very hard to be a straight man in a comedy and still have energy and be an interesting character.
Right.
Which you
I'm trying
do.
to think of a great example of like a comedic straight man whose career was being the straight man.
Well, you sort of said it.
Bateman, yeah.
Yeah.
Dan Aykroyd, I think, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Like he and Belushi. Belushi was kind of crazy and he was more the straight man.
Yeah.
Or Spies Like Us, Chevy Chase was bonkers and he was kind of straight man.
Yeah.
Anyways, I like it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, but I can see if I hadn't got to do the other thing, I would be jealous
Sure.
of them.
Sure.
Because they're getting all the laughs on set.
Yeah. Okay, Judd. So we had Judd on, which is a big fish, big get.
What a resume. Are you kidding me? I mean, my goodness. I don't know if anyone's ever had a string of comedies like that are that successful.
No, it's pretty amazing. I also was thinking because, he has this book for Gary Shandling's book.
Uh-huh.
And he did a documentary about him.
Yeah.
And he was his mentor. And I was just thinking about that. He's keeping him alive.
Right.
And that made me sad for him. I mean, and it made me happy for him that he's able to do that and still sort of delve into his world. But it also made me feel like, oh, he doesn't want to let go of him.
Right.
Which made me feel sad.
For him, yeah.
Yeah. It's hard to love people that much.
Should I be doing that for somebody? I guess I haven't had a real close friend in the public eye who died who I can keep alive.
I'll do it for you.
You will? Okay. We'll start working on it. It's probably a couple years out. Start going through my journal.
When you die, what do you want to happen with your journals?
Everyone can read it.
They can?
Absolutely. I'll be dead.
But what about the people in them
What about them?
that are alive? It might affect them.
In what way?
Well, I don't know what's in your journals, so I don't know. But if you're talking about someone,
I generally don't write anything bad about anybody.
you don't.
My journal's about me,
Yeah.
how I react to stuff, what happened, what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
It's not like Monica's a bitch.
Right.
Rob's a
Well,
dick.
you did write in your journal that you hoped I would die.
In your dream, you thought I did that.
Yeah.
Which I never would do, nor have I. Although if you want, because this could be, boy, this is a Sophie's choice, because I have an opportunity to make a dreams can come true. Like I could make your dream come true by just writing in my journal, I hope you die. And should you always try to make someone's dreams come true? But I would never want to write that in my journal. You can see how it's a real catch-22.
Well, why do you want to make people's nightmares come true?
Well, you positioned it as a dream.
Because it was a dream, but you know
Right.
that I didn't like it.
Right. So it is a nightmare. But when you pose it as a dream, then the wording of it sounds like you should make someone's dream come true, right? That's an old saying. All my dreams
Okay,
came
I think
true.
you're confusing literal dreams with dreams.
I am intentionally, yeah, for the sake of this being a catch-22.
Oh, okay.
You see how I'm trying to make it that?
I see.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you could make it come true. I'll check when you're dead. See what you decided to do.
Okay. Let me ask you this. If Ashok passed and you found out he had been keeping a journal for 30 years, would you read it?
Yes.
You would. So then I'm inclined to think my daughters will read it, my
Yeah,
journal,
I think they probably
which
will.
I would want them to read. Mm-hmm. I think as they get into their 20s, that's when I started writing it.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll recognize I was struggling with the same stuff they might be struggling with. Because they'll probably think, oh, we think of our parents as like, they don't even have feelings.
Right. I know.
They're just honky-dory.
Yeah.
They're plodding along.
Yeah.
Found out Ashok was like really wrestling with some kind of stuff that related to you. That could be comforting.
That makes sense, but I don't think they need to find out when you're dead. Why don't you just tell them when you're alive? Like, I think you
Well, I
can share
intend
that.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can share all that.
Yeah. I don't plan on keeping any of that secret.
Yeah, because I think, like, it's extra sad if they find it all out after when, like, they can't even talk about it with you or...
Unless they hire a medium.
That's true.
to communicate with me.
I hope.
If I'm dead and I keep getting interrupted by a medium, I'll be frustrated.
You will?
Well,
what
if
do you
it's-
think you'll be doing that you'll get frustrated by?
It's supposed to be Eden, right? It's supposed to be heaven. It's supposed to be euphoric and blissful and a love you've never experienced. So I don't know. Hey Dax, yeah, I'm just talking with your uncle right now. He hired me.
Yeah.
He wants to know if you remember where his car keys are. You were the last person to see him before you died. Like, well, fucking figure out your own Earth stuff. I'm up here now.
Okay.
I worked hard to get here.
Well, no.
Monica, did you have a favorite part of Nashville? Was it fun to see your 4 friends?
Yeah, my friends came from Georgia. They drove. We watched the game, the big Georgia game.
And
Georgia, Florida.
they're inordinately attractive.
Are they?
I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah, they're really good looking.
Yeah.
Last night we interviewed somebody
Yeah.
in the evening.
Yeah.
We were talking about popularity.
Yeah.
And I look at those friends you have. They were popular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were.
And you're in their group, so you were popular. There's almost no two ways about
I
it.
still think there's differences.
We all feel unpopular, I think. Maybe
No,
is
no.
it?
I don't think I was unpopular.
Oh,
I would never
okay.
say that.
Okay.
But I don't think
Out of 10, you'd give yourself a 6 of popularity?
maybe a 7.
I think you had to have been an 8 of popularity, just based on a lot of things.
Well, but nobody wanted to date me. That's a big part of it.
Right.
Popularity in high school.
But again, this is where you and I argue a lot, which is I'm quite certain a lot of people wanted to date you, and I really bet those people sent some signals that you didn't catch.
Yeah, we have to agree to disagree.
We're gonna
on
have to agree to
that.
disagree on that. But that
Yeah.
is how I explain that.
Christina, one of the girls, she was prom queen.
Oh, she was.
Yeah.
So that's a 10, right? If you're prom queen, that's where we're gonna set the bar at 10.
Okay, well, prom queen was picked by the faculty.
What? That's weird.
It is weird, but she was very popular.
That's why they shouldn't be able to.
I know.
It
It's
just means
weird.
like teachers' pets are going to get
Kind
picked,
of,
right?
Yeah, but I think that's the point. Is like these are like good kids,
Okay.
which is
well,
nice. Homecoming court is chosen, and queen and king is chosen by student body,
Oh, okay. Okay.
and I think she was on court.
Oh, as well.
Yeah.
A double whammy.
Yeah, she was very popular.
Yeah. Now there was a group of people in my school that were incredibly popular because, like, let's say the girl was just the prettiest girl in school.
Sure.
But rarely did that person then have the most sparkly personality where they would be overall. So it was literally just their looks had them in that top strata of popularity. But then they
Yeah.
weren't even that outgoing. Like some people are
Oh.
introverts and super hot
That's true.
and become super pop.
There were 2 groups.
Mm-hmm.
One was like kind of like the party group.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most popular, I would say.
Okay.
I wasn't in that, although I was friends with everyone in it.
Sure.
But I-
These were they the athletes as well?
Some of them were on my cheerleading squad, and yeah, some football
But the
players.
guys were football players.
Yeah.
They seem to get a fast pass, the football players, into
Yeah.
popularity.
They do. They
Yeah.
do.
Rob, were they the most popular in your school, football players?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Okay. Rob, what would you give yourself out of 10?
I was friends with kids not at my school that were all like older musicians.
That's a move.
So I was, yeah.
Now, was that a reaction to? Explain how that came to be.
I was friends with all of the like jock people, elementary school, junior high.
Okay.
Played sports,
Uh-huh.
and then high school kind of was like,
You blazed your
not
own
into
trail.
that. Yeah.
No, was it because though you did not feel like you were being embraced by that group? Because now I too had a satellite group of friends not in my high school, but that was largely a response to me in 9th and 10th grade feeling like no one really liked me. So I was like, that's cool. I'll go hang out with these gearhead friends I have.
Probably
and
had a little bit to do with it.
a little mixed match.
Yeah.
Okay. Little chicken, little egg. Well, look at
Yeah.
us all here. We're all in the same trailer on
That's
the
right.
dusty set of Bless This Mess in Newhall, California.
Equifinality.
Oh, equifinality. So many roads leading to one place.
Yeah, we just learned that word
We
yesterday.
like that. That
good
word
word.
to me is very soothing.
I like it too.
Equifinality. It sounds like water.
I think equifinality.
Equifinality? What was I saying? Aquafinality?
Yeah. You made it watery.
I think aquafinality should be a thing too because all streams will end up in the ocean. So they are finite.
You're right.
Okay, Judd Apatow.
Okay, yeah, Judd. So I just felt sad for him that he had
Lost someone he loved so much.
yeah. But I will keep your memory alive. Or maybe I'll die.
Hopefully we'll die together.
That'd be fun.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
We're like, let's see, I would be 102, you're 90.
Yeah.
And
that's
we're-
pretty good.
You're visiting me in my retirement community.
Oh, and you're
even
drunk.
and I'm hammered. And even though I've agreed that I can drive a golf cart because I'm only staying in the community, we do decide to go off property. And we're crossing a pretty busy
wow.
road.
Okay.
And we're in the lap, and we're in the middle of a good lap, and bam! Budweiser truck smashes us.
Oh, boy.
It turns us into dust.
Oh.
That's kind of the dream, right?
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Also, is it a men's only retirement?
No.
Oh, well, then I can live there.
Yeah. I just think because you're 90, you're still like on your own.
Oh,
like,
I'm
you're
on my
like maybe
feet.
living in the city still. I'm out in Arizona
Sprightly.
in a double wide.
Wow. He mentioned that there was a bear on some movie that killed its trainer.
Uh-oh.
That was Stephen K. Miller, the trainer, not the bear.
Yeah, I doubt they would give the bear 3
It'd
names.
be cool.
Yeah.
Stephen K. Miller was an American animal trainer wrangler and stunt double who was killed by a bear while making a promotional video. Not even a movie.
Yeah. Oh.
Yikes. Miller had worked as a trainer at Predators in Action, an animal training facility operated by his cousin, Randy Miller.
Randy Miller is the one who owned fucking...
Bart the Bear?
No, he's the one who owned a New York seltzer water.
What?
Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. The dad started New York Seltzer Water, and then he turned the whole company over to his son.
Oh,
he's
my
like
God.
24 years old, and he's the subject of a Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. He announces a new flavor by base jumping off the roof of the Mondrian. He drag races cars. He has pet tigers. He's walking through the office, and they're almost attacking people. That guy then went into animal wrangling. That's him. So this was
The
one of this is his
son
fucking
or the
cousin.
dad?
The son.
The son is Randy.
Yes, Randy had sweet long hair, he is so awesomely 80s in that lifestyle.
And we're sure it's the same Randy Miller.
Positive, because I know he's gone into predator animal wrangling.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, the company went belly up, but he
Probably after this incident.
he had accumulated some wild big cats, from that open savanna.
Oh, my God. So he hired his cousin, and then his cousin died.
Man. Ooh, I didn't know that. This is a big update.
Because, Randy Miller that trains wild and exotic animals for film and television appearances. At the time of his death, Miller was not working as a trainer, but was attempting to perform a bear wrestling stunt supervised by Randy. Yikes.
What could be worse
Oh my
than
God.
watching a loved one get attacked by a bear?
And you're in charge.
Yeah, and you're supposed to be, quote, in charge. I've told you this. I'm not afraid of a lot of motorsport stuff.
Yeah.
I am terrified of animals. They are so unpredictable.
Yeah.
Every time you see like animals attack TV show, there'd be like clips of always someone on a talk show with a bear, and that bear out of nowhere just goes berserk and attacks. Or these fucking cats. Get real. A lion or a tiger, you can't ever trust they're not going to eat you. I mean, look
Never.
at Siegfried and Roy.
Yeah. And
You couldn't be closer to some tigers than they were.
yeah.
And the one got mauled, right?
I think.
Severely.
Yeah, we're really just playing with fire on these movie sets and TV
It's
sets.
like juggling handguns.
I know. I don't
mean, you
like
get good
it.
at it, but
God, it also just goes to show like actors feel like they just can't say it. And you can't because they'll just hire somebody else who'll do it.
well, I'll say what I suffered from is you've grown up watching movies your whole life. And in movies, people interact with animals and they jump off cliffs and all this. So like when I was doing Without a Paddle,
Yeah.
I felt like somehow this has been organized in a way that's safe.
Yeah, I know.
And it wasn't until I watched a stuntman get hurt where I was like, oh, no one here is impervious to getting really fucked up.
I
If you're-
know.
You're doing this stuff, you're doing this stuff.
I'm going to do a show where I'm just bedridden the whole like 6 seasons.
Oh, my goodness.
So I'm just kind of napping there.
Is it a will she, won't she get out of the bed like the whole time?
That's right. That's right.
And a couple times you actually get your feet onto the ground.
Well, that's
you're
the
gonna
cliffhanger.
stand.
And then we'll see what happens.
You're so much
season to me.
thinner than not people I associate with staying in bed for 6 years. Like what we would call shut-ins.
Oh, sure.
You don't have the physique of a shut-in.
Well,
So you're going to have to wear
I'm
probably,
playing
and
out
I
of-
have to say it, a fat suit. Now, it's not what I named it, but in show business,
Well.
you're going to have to wear a fat suit.
Well, I can break the stereotype.
Or you could put on the weight. Pull a Christian
Oh, put on
Bale.
the weight.
Ooh.
Put on the weight.
Wait, guys, no, you don't have to be larger to be a shut-in.
You don't have to.
You can have just agoraphobia,
Yeah.
the bed kind.
Oh, yeah. Right. Roomophobia.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to get on that.
Okay.
Okay, so you said Roseanne,
Bar.
right, but the show, the new the news show got 25 million viewers, quadrupled what any show had gotten in the last 15 years. Oops, I forgot to fact check that last part.
Yeah. That's
Oops.
not going to be right.
And
already.
I don't think
Yeah,
it's right.
that's all
Yeah. But the first episode of Roseanne delivered at 18.2 million viewers and a 5.1 rating among adults 18 to 49.
So just to put that into context, Bless This Mess is a hit comedy.
Yeah.
It gets like, I think, 3.5 million viewers a week.
Yeah.
Kristen's show is a hit comedy. I think gets like 2.6 million viewers a week.
Right.
And this got 18 on the opening. That's
Yes.
crazy. So
It's
in that
crazy.
case, it is 6 times as much as like your other shows.
Well, that's true. But I
Yeah.
wonder what the next.
biggest. Well, the next biggest would probably be the where they're geniuses, Big Bang Theory,
Oh, right. Which
or
gets a
Modern
lot.
Family. Yeah.
The series fell from its height,
Okay.
and it concluded with a 10.3. Still insane.
It's still insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still a humongous hit.
That's nuts.
Almost impossible to get these
thought-
days.
Yes. I thought it was really interesting since he knows her, what his thoughts on her and her mental illness and all of that. He thinks, not thinks, he's like, she has a mental illness. She talks about that. And
In her stand up.
yes, and he interviewed her for his book. Oh, speaking of that book, Sick in the Head is fantastic.
It is?
It is so good. I have it. And it's just interviews with all these different comedians, but the interviews are really good and deep
Oh.
and very interesting. Yeah, it's a good read.
I think it's cute that he's returned to interviewing so many times. Because he
Yeah.
started as a kid calling these comedians and getting on the phone with them
That's true.
by accident, basically.
What a cool full circle. And
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really manifested some stuff.
He sure has.
Okay, if people were confused towards the end, he brought his friend, or his friend came.
Yeah, I was confused.
Yes.
I was confused. I thought he had something to do with a new project that he was maybe promoting, but no,
Right.
just he had a buddy stop by.
Yeah, because I think they together were going to go to the next thing.
Uh-huh.
So it was like, hey, come in for a bit. His name was Wayne. He was so nice.
Very nice
and very
person.
funny.
Yeah.
I think he's a comedian.
Yep, good looking, funny, sexy, rich.
All the boxes.
All the boxes were checked.
Okay, so he talks about this movie called Daddy Longlegs, and it's a dad and his kid, and then he said, I think maybe that's his real kid, but it's not.
Oh, it was not.
The kids are not his real kids, but they are brothers. There's two
Though
kids.
the two children are
Yes,
siblings.
yes.
Okay. But bear no relationship to the lead actor
Right.
other than friends.
I think all friends.
Yeah, lifetime friends.
Yeah, I think. Well, this is just a thought I had that since he grew up around people who he identified as being so funny and stars like Adam Sandler, when he was like, oh, I just know this person's going to be
Yeah.
the biggest star in the world. And I bet that subconsciously did give him some confidence, or he just has some magic where he can identify what is actually real. There's something special in people, and I think he can identify that.
Well, I think that's what his genius
It's-
is being able to
yes.
recognize that Seth and Evan are competent enough to write their own movie.
Yeah.
You know, or that
But
all
all
these
of
people.
them.
Yes.
All
I think
of them.
that's his definite genius is being able to recognize who's got it.
Yeah. But maybe it started even then, just with his roommate. He just identified like, oh, this person
Yeah.
is going to be a massive star. And it seems like, well, duh, because Adam Sandler is so good, but he was just a boy in an apartment.
Oh, right.
And there are so many talented people out here to be able to be like, nope, this one. And then it
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. I bet it would be a confidence builder in that it at least eliminates one of the things you tell yourself, which is like, well, this couldn't happen to me.
Right.
But if your bozo roommate becomes Adam Sandler, you're kind
Right.
of like, well, fuck, it happened to him.
Yeah,
It could happen to me.
that's true.
Yeah.
Proximity,
Look at that.
success.
Success, it could happen to anyone. That's the message.
That is a message. It's a good message.
I love you.
I love you.
Let's put some air on in here.
Okay.